Hi guys, and welcome to Relaxation History. Tonight we slip quietly into a Paris that still wakes itself without switches or glowing screens, where morning arrives by sound before it arrives by light. You open your eyes to the low murmur of a city already in motion, carts rattling somewhere below, footsteps echoing along stone, a voice calling out bread before you are fully awake. The air in the room feels cool and slightly damp, the kind of chill that settles into old walls overnight. You probably will not survive this without a little patience, because nothing here moves quickly and nothing is designed to make life effortless. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, feel free to share where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. There is something comforting about knowing how many different nights and mornings are overlapping in this moment. Now, dim the lights and let yourself stay exactly where you are as the story continues, without any rush to get up or move on. You lie still for a moment listening. There is no alarm clock screaming for your attention, no sudden vibration pulling you back into urgency. Instead, your waking is gradual. Somewhere nearby, a neighbour coughs. A shutter opens with a wooden scrape that sounds practiced rather than annoyed. Below your window, you hear the first wagon of the day roll past iron rims on stone, making a sound that is both rough and familiar. Paris in the 1890s does not wake all at once. It stirs in layers. The bed beneath you is simple. A mattress stuffed with wool or straw rests on a wooden frame that has known better days. It creaks softly when you shift your weight. Sheets feel cool against your skin, not unpleasant, just honest. This is a mainstream historical reality of the time. Even in a major capital like Paris, most households do not enjoy consistent heating through the night. Warmth is something you earn again each morning. You sit up slowly, letting your body adjust. The room is dim, lit only by the pale grey light slipping through thin curtains. Electricity exists in theory in laboratories and demonstrations, but not here, not yet. Gas lighting is present in the city, yes, but inside private homes, it remains limited, expensive, and slightly risky. Many people still prefer daylight and flame, trusting the rhythms they understand. Historians still argue whether Parisians resisted electricity out of fear, cost, or simple habit, but for now the result is the same. Morning belongs to the sun. You swing your feet down onto the floor and the cold stone or tile greets you immediately. It travels upward, sharp at first, then dulling into a steady presence. You pause, breathing out slowly, because rushing never helps with cold. This is one of those small lessons everyone here knows instinctively. There is no central heating to save you from impatience. The room smells faintly of last night, a trace of smoke from a candle or lamp, old wood fabric that has absorbed years of living. Paris is often remembered for perfume and romance, but the truth is more layered. This city smells lived in. Even in private spaces, the boundary between indoors and outdoors feels thin. You dress deliberately. Clothing takes time. Buttons, laces, layers. There's no synthetic stretch here, no effortless pull-on comfort. Wool scratches, slightly linen feels crisp. These textures keep you present, aware of your body and the temperature around it. A quirky tidbit that surprises many people is that Parisians in this era often slept in some of their daytime garments during winter, not out of laziness, but practicality. Removing too many layers meant surrendering warmth you might not regain easily. Once dressed, you move toward the small washstand. A basin waits, water drawn earlier or left from the night before. You dip your hands in and feel the bite of cold immediately. Washing is brief, purposeful. Face hands may be a quick splash behind the ears. This is not indulgence, it is maintenance. Teeth are cleaned with powders or simple brushes, routines that feel more like chores than rituals. As you straighten up, you catch your reflection in the mirror. The glass is imperfect, slightly warped, softening your features. You look a little older in this light, a little more serious. It is easy to forget that mirrors themselves were once luxury items, and even now, clarity is not guaranteed. Scholars still debate how much daily self-awareness people had before modern mirrors became common, but here you see just enough of yourself to move on. Outside, the city grows louder. You hear a vendor calling out fresh milk, another advertising vegetables. Horses stamp and snort. Somewhere metal strikes metal in a workshop already open for the day. Paris. Before electricity is not quiet, but its noise has a different texture. It rises and falls instead of humming constantly. You pause at the window and push the curtain aside. The street below is narrow, lined with buildings that lean slightly inward as if sharing secrets. Light slides down the stone walls, catching dust in the air. People move with purpose, heads down, hands busy. No one scrolls. No one waits for a signal. The day has already begun without asking permission. It is worth remembering a widely accepted historical fact here. By the 1890s, Paris is one of the most densely populated cities in Europe. Millions of lives overlap in tight quarters, and yet without electric light to extend the day, time still feels finite. There is an unspoken understanding that daylight matters. You do not waste it casually. As you turn away from the window, you feel the quiet pressure of routine settle in. There is comfort in knowing what comes next. You will eat something simple. You will step into the street. You will join the flow of a city that has not yet learned how to stay awake all night. And as you move toward the door, that thought lingers gently. This Paris is balanced on a threshold. Electricity is coming. Change is coming. But for now, you wake the way countless others do, guided by sound, light and habit rather than switches and screens. The day unfolds whether you hurry or not, and that, oddly enough, makes it easier to breathe. You step fully into the morning now, and the first thing you feel is how little the building protects you from the outside world. Parisian apartments in the 1890s are sturdy but not sealed. Cold slips through cracks in stone, through wooden window frames that have expanded and contracted with decades of seasons. The air inside never feels entirely separate from the air outside. It simply feels quieter. You move back toward the washstand to finish what passes for preparation. The water has not warmed in the time you were thinking. It never does on its own. Hot water is something you make, not something you expect. You splash your face again and let yourself exhale slowly, because reacting sharply only makes the cold feel worse. This is one of those habits learned early and reinforced daily. A mainstream historical reality often overlooked is that most Parisian homes at this time lack indoor plumbing, as we understand it today. Water must be carried, stored, conserved. You become aware of how much effort sits behind even small comforts. The act of washing becomes deliberate, careful and brief. Cleanliness exists, but it follows a different logic than modern abundance. The floor beneath your feet reminds you again that warmth here is temporary. Stone holds cold like a memory. Rugs help a little, but only where they reach. You learn to step lightly to move with intention, rather than rushing across rooms. Furniture is arranged with this in mind. Beds are not placed near windows. Chairs sit closer to walls that stay warmer overnight. You glance toward the small stove or fireplace if you are lucky enough to have one. Ash from yesterday remains pale and powdery. Starting a fire is work. Wood costs money, coal costs more, and both must be carried upstairs. You weigh the decision quietly. Is this a morning for fire, or can you manage without? These calculations shape the rhythm of daily life more than people realise. Historians still argue whether the constant negotiation with cold made people more resilient or simply more tired, but it undeniably shaped behaviour. You decide to wait. Daylight is strengthening and movement will warm you soon enough. You pull your coat tighter and reach for your shoes. Leather is stiff in the cold, and you work your feet in slowly. Everything takes a little longer than it would in a modern room with steady heat. Time stretches here not dramatically, but persistently. As you straighten, you notice the quiet sounds of the building itself. A footstep above you, a door closing down the hall, a muffled voice passing through the wall. Apartments share lives in ways that feel intimate without being intentional. Privacy exists, but it is thin. You know your neighbours by sound long before you know them by name. A quirky detail from this period is that many people identify the hour not by clocks, but by recurring noises. The baker opening shop, the milk seller arriving, the school bell down the street. Time announces itself through routine rather than digits. Even those who own watches rarely consult them obsessively. The day unfolds in expected blocks. You gather what you need before leaving. A scarf, gloves if you have them, perhaps a small bag or basket. There is no sense of grabbing everything at once. You have done this movement so many times that your hands know where things belong. Familiarity replaces urgency. Before stepping out, you take one last look around the room. The light has shifted slightly. Shadows soften. The grey of morning becomes pale gold along the edges of furniture. It is subtle but noticeable if you allow yourself to see it. This is one of the quiet gifts of life without electric light. Changes happen gradually. Your eyes adjust along with the day instead of being shocked into brightness. You open the door and enter the stairwell. It smells different here. Damp, stone, old wood, faint traces of cooking from other apartments. Stairs curve upward and downward, worn smooth by countless feet. You descend carefully, one hand brushing the wall for balance. There is no expectation that someone has cleaned this space overnight. It belongs to everyone and no one at once. As you step outside, the city greets you fully. The chill feels sharper here, but also cleaner. Your breath becomes visible for a moment, then disappears. The street is already alive. Horses stand patiently as carts are loaded. Vendors arrange goods on wooden tables. A child runs past coat, unbuttoned energy unconcerned with temperature. Paris in the 1890s is often romanticised, but standing here you feel its physical demands immediately. Streets are uneven, pavements vary in width. You watch where you step, avoiding puddles that may hide refuse. This awareness becomes second nature. Walking is not passive, it requires attention. You move with the flow of others, not crowded yet, but steady. People nod to one another without stopping. There is recognition without intimacy. Everyone has somewhere to be, but no one appears frantic. Without electric light extending the night, mornings carry more weight. Work begins earlier and rest comes sooner. A commonly accepted historical fact is that many Parisian workers begin their day before sunrise during winter months. Natural light dictates productivity. You feel that pressure gently now, a quiet encouragement to keep moving, to make use of what the day offers. As you walk, smells layer themselves around you. Fresh bread from a nearby bakery, the sharpness of coal smoke, the unmistakable presence of animals, horses, dogs, even chickens in some neighbourhoods. Paris is not yet sanitized. Life leaves traces everywhere. Scholars still debate how residents mentally process this constant sensory input. Some argue it dulled sensitivity. Others suggest it sharpened awareness. Standing here, you suspect it did both. You learn to filter without ignoring, to notice without being overwhelmed. Your hands begin to warm as you move. The cold retreats slightly, no longer aggressive. Your body finds its rhythm, breath, step, sound. The city carries you forward, and you let it. There is no switch to flip that changes everything. Comfort arrives gradually earned through motion and attention. As you continue down the street, the idea settles quietly in your mind. This Paris requires participation. It does not accommodate passivity. Every small comfort is the result of choice, effort, and timing. And strangely, that makes the morning feel fuller, more solid, as if you are truly present rather than simply passing through. You notice it before you consciously name it. The city speaks to you, not in a single voice, but in layers that overlap and separate again, like instruments tuning themselves before a performance. As you continue walking, the sounds of Paris grow more distinct. Footsteps strike stone in uneven rhythms. Wooden wheels clatter and complain. A bell rings somewhere nearby, not urgently, just enough to be heard. This is a city that announces itself through noise because it has no other way to broadcast presence. There are no engines humming, no electrical buzz filling the background. Silence and sound take turns rather than blending into a constant blur. You find yourself noticing the spaces between noises, the brief pauses where nothing happens at all. A man passes you carrying a bundle of newspapers under his arm. He calls out the headlines in a practiced chant voice, rising and falling in a way that makes the words memorable, even if you do not stop to listen. This is one of the primary ways information moves through the city. A widely accepted historical reality is that street vendors and criers play a crucial role in spreading news in 1890s Paris, especially among those who cannot read or who simply do not have time to sit with a paper. Information here is public, vocal, and fleeting. You hear laughter spill from an open doorway, followed by the clink of cups. Somewhere behind that sound is a cafe, already awake. Chairs being set out, tables wiped down, the promise of warmth and conversation lingering in the air. The scent of coffee drifts towards you, bitter and comforting at once. It makes your pace slow, just slightly, not enough to stop, but enough to notice. As you move farther along, the street narrows. Buildings press closer together and the acoustics change. Sounds bounce and echo, making even small movements feel amplified. A child drags a stick along an iron railing, delighted by the metallic ringing it produces. No one tells him to stop. Noise is part of life here, not an interruption of it. A curious detail that surprises many modern listeners is how comfortable Parisians of this era are with loud environments. What would feel overwhelming today is simply normal. People raise their voices to be heard, but rarely complain about the volume itself. Quiet is not expected outdoors. It is reserved for late night and early morning, and even then only in pockets. You pass a woman negotiating with a fishmonger, their conversation brisk, but not unfriendly. The fishmonger's knife strikes the table with a dull thud as he gestures, emphasizing his point. The smell of the sea clings to the stall, sharp and unmistakable. You catch it for a moment, then it is replaced by the earthy scent of vegetables, then by something less pleasant that you choose not to identify too closely. The street surface changes beneath your feet. Smooth stone gives way to rougher patches, repaired unevenly over time. You adjust your stride without thinking. Walking here requires awareness but not anxiety. You learn to read the ground the way sailors read water. Scholars still argue whether the constant sensory engagement of cities like Paris improved spatial awareness or simply became background noise over time. As you walk, you suspect the answer depends on the person. Some move through this environment as if insulated eyes forward mind elsewhere. Others seem deeply attuned, responding to every shift in sound and movement. You find yourself somewhere in between. A cart passes close enough that you feel the air move. The horse pulling it smells warm and alive, its breath visible in the cool air. The driver clicks his tongue softly, a sound that seems to mean several things at once. Slow down, keep moving. We are all sharing this space. Traffic laws exist, but much of the order comes from mutual understanding rather than strict enforcement. You notice how often people make eye contact. Not prolonged, not intrusive, but frequent. A glance to signal intention, a nod to acknowledge proximity. Without the distraction of personal devices, attention stays outward. You are constantly aware of others and they of you. It creates a subtle sense of belonging even among strangers. Sound also carries warnings. You hear a shout and step aside just in time as a cart turns the corner faster than expected. You hear glass clink and instinctively give a wide berth to someone carrying bottles. The city teaches you how to listen for danger without panic. Your ears become tools. A mainstream fact, often noted by urban historians, is that Paris in the late 19th century undergoes massive transformation under Baron Haussmann, reshaping streets and neighbourhoods. Yet even after these changes, the city remains deeply human-scaled. Streets are wide enough for movement, but narrow enough for voices to carry. You feel that design choice now, whether intentional or not. You pause briefly at a crossing and let others pass. A group of workers walks together, their boots striking in near unison. Their conversation flows easily, punctuated by laughter and complaint. Work is a shared topic, a shared burden. You sense that walking together is as much about companionship as efficiency. Another small but telling detail emerges as you listen. Music, not recorded, not amplified, but played live by someone you cannot quite see. A violin perhaps, or an accordion tucked into a corner of the street. The melody drifts in and out, sometimes swallowed by louder sounds, sometimes clear and haunting. Music here is temporary. If you miss it, it is gone. Historians continue to debate how this impermanence shaped cultural memory. Did people value moments more because they could not be replayed? Or did they simply accept their passing without much thought? Standing here, you feel the pull of attention. You listen more closely because you know the sound will not wait for you. As you move on, you realise that the street itself feels like a living room stretched long and narrow. People linger without blocking. Conversations begin and end without ceremony. No one asks permission to exist in the space. You are part of it simply by walking. The rhythm of your steps settles into sync with the city. Noise no longer feels chaotic. It feels patterned, predictable, without being boring. You breathe in, breathe out, and let Paris speak around you, carrying you forward into the day. By the time you slow near a corner bakery, your body has settled into the city's tempo. The cold no longer shocks you. It lingers instead, a thin reminder at the edges of your fingers and ears. The smell of bread reaches you before the shop comes into view, warm and slightly sweet, carrying a promise that feels almost generous. You join a short line already forming outside the door. No one complains about waiting. Waiting is simply part of how food happens. Inside the space is narrow and brightened by daylight bouncing off pale walls. Shelves hold loaves of different shapes, some long and slender, others round and heavy. The baker works with practiced movements, hands dusted white motions, economical and calm. Bread here is not a treat. It is structure. Accounts from the period make it clear that bread provides a significant portion of daily calories for working Parisians. You feel the importance of that fact as you watch each loaf change hands with quiet respect. When it is your turn, you ask for something simple. There is no menu board glowing above your head, no list of options designed to overwhelm. You take what is available, what is fresh, what fits your coins. The loaf is still warm, heat pressing gently through the paper. It feels alive, almost breathing. You tuck it under your arm and step back outside. You do not eat it all at once. That would be wasteful and unwise. Instead, you break off a piece as you walk the crust, cracking softly. Crumbs fall without guilt. Birds have learned to follow this pattern. A sparrow lands nearby, bold and hopeful. This small exchange between human and animal happens countless times each morning, unnoticed and unremarkable. Another detail emerges as you eat. Butter is not guaranteed. Jam is a luxury. Sugar exists, but it is measured carefully. Breakfast often consists of bread alone, sometimes dipped into coffee or wine, depending on circumstance. That last part surprises many modern listeners, but diluted wine appears at the morning table in many households, safer than water and cheaper than other comforts. Researchers still differ on how common this practice truly was, but enough references appear to make it plausible. You continue walking, chewing slowly. Meals are not rushed because there is no reason to rush them. There is no screen demanding attention, no notification, pulling your focus away from taste and texture. The bread is dense filling. It settles warmly in your stomach, replacing the hollow feeling left by the cold room you woke in. As you move on, you notice others eating as they walk. A man tears into an apple juice running down his fingers. A woman sips from a cup, steam rising briefly before disappearing. Eating in public carries no embarrassment. It is practical, efficient, and understood. Hunger does not wait politely for private moments. You pass a small stall selling cheese wheels stacked carefully despite the chill. The smell is sharp, almost aggressive. You wrinkle your nose without stopping. Cheese will wait for later, perhaps for lunch, if your coins allow. Food decisions follow a quiet hierarchy shaped by cost, time, and physical labour. Those who work harder tend to eat heavier. Those who sit more often eat less. This pattern appears repeatedly in household records from the era. The street widens slightly, and you find yourself near a square where morning activity gathers. Vendors arrange produce on rough wooden tables. Cabbages, carrots, onions. Nothing exotic, nothing unnecessary. A peculiar habit noted by some observers is that shoppers often squeeze, tap, and even sniff vegetables, openly judging quality with all senses. No one finds this rude. It is simply thorough. You pause to watch a brief exchange between a customer and a seller. Coins clink softly. A price is questioned, then accepted. There is no long negotiation. Both parties know roughly what things cost. Prices fluctuate with seasons and shortages, but surprises are rare. Food budgeting is a skill learned early and practiced daily. Scholars have long discussed whether this constant calculation around food created anxiety or competence. Did people feel stressed by scarcity or empowered by familiarity? Standing here, you sense a quiet confidence. People know how to feed themselves within limits. There is frustration at times, certainly, but also knowledge. You take another bite of bread and realize how much walking you have already done. Distance feels different when measured by steps rather than minutes. The city does not shrink around you. It remains full-size, demanding effort in exchange for access. You feel that effort in your legs, mild and steady. The square hums with conversation. Voices overlap without colliding. A woman laughs sharply, then lowers her tone. A man clears his throat before calling out prices. A child tugs at a sleeve, impatient. These sounds create a living backdrop that shifts constantly. No one curates it. It simply happens. You notice something else as you linger. Time feels less fragmented. Breakfast bleeds into morning work without a sharp boundary. There is no precise moment when leisure ends and labour begins. The transition is gradual, guided by hunger satisfied and daylight rising. As you resume walking the bread, nearly finished, you feel more anchored in your body than you might expect. Food has done its job. Not indulgent, not exciting, but sufficient. That sufficiency carries a quiet relief. You understand now why so much attention is given to meals, even simple ones. They stabilise the day. Another observation surfaces. People eat standing, walking, leaning, rarely sitting for long, unless the meal is meant to stretch into conversation. Furniture is reserved for later. Mornings belong to movement. A lesser-known habit from this period is the use of communal tables in some neighbourhoods where workers eat together quickly before dispersing. These arrangements blur the line between public and private life even further. Historians disagree on how widespread this practice truly was, but enough accounts mention it to suggest it was not unusual. You pass one such group now clustered briefly around a surface worn smooth by elbows. They speak little, focused on eating. When finished, they part without ceremony. There is no lingering goodbye. The connection exists only for the length of the meal, and that is enough. As you swallow the last bite of bread, you brush crumbs from your coat and continue on. Your hunger is gone, replaced by a steady warmth that feels earned. The day opens wider in front of you, and without quite realizing it, you are ready to meet it. You notice the change first in your legs. Not pain, not fatigue, just a growing awareness of distance. Paris reveals itself slowly when you move through it on foot. Streets do not rush past you. They unfold. Corners arrive when they are ready, not when you expect them. Without bicycles rushing by or engines insisting on priority, walking becomes the default language of the city. Your pace settles into something steady and unhurried. You're not strolling for pleasure, but you are not hurrying either. This is how most people move here. Walking is not exercise, not leisure, not a lifestyle choice. It is simply how you exist between one obligation and the next. Municipal records from the period show that the vast majority of daily travel in Paris happens on foot, even for people who could technically afford alternatives. Distance is accepted as part of life, not an inconvenience to be solved. You pass shop fronts, still dark inside shutters, half open, waiting for the sun to rise a little higher. The rhythm of the street feels intentional. Certain businesses open early. Bakers, butchers, markets. Others wait. Tailors' bookshops, cafes that depend more on conversation than necessity. Electricity would later blur these boundaries, but for now, daylight draws clear lines through the day. As you walk, you become aware of how much your surroundings shape your posture. You step around puddles, adjust your stride for uneven stone, slow instinctively near intersections where carts might appear without warning. Your attention stays outward. There is no mental room for drifting. Walking here is a conversation between your body and the city. A small but revealing habit emerges as you watch others. People rarely walk alone in silence for long. If not speaking to someone beside them, they hum softly, mutter to themselves, or respond aloud to thoughts. This is not seen as odd. It is simply another way sound fills space. Some researchers suggest that constant walking encourages this kind of vocal self-accompaniment, but opinions differ. What is clear is that silence indoors and silence outdoors carry very different meanings. You cross paths with a man carrying a ladder, balanced expertly on his shoulder. He moves with confidence, weaving through pedestrians who adjust without complaint. There is an unspoken choreography at work. Everyone anticipates movement. Everyone yields just enough. Accidents happen, of course, but far less often than you might expect, given the density of traffic. The street ahead slopes gently upward. You feel it in your calves almost immediately. Paris is not flat, and hills remind you of that fact without apology. The city does not smooth itself for ease. It expects adaptation. This shapes daily schedules in subtle ways. People plan routes based not only on distance but on effort. A slightly longer flat path may be preferred to a shorter steep one depending on what the day demands. Another overlooked detail is footwear. Shoes here are built for endurance, not comfort. Soles are thick, stiff, sometimes repaired again and again. A well-worn pair tells the story of thousands of steps. Shoemakers are essential tradespeople, and their work is visible everywhere. You notice people glance down, occasionally checking footing, checking wear. Walking is valuable enough to protect. You pass a woman guiding two children, each gripping her hand. She sets the pace firm, but not harsh. They complain briefly, then fall into step. Childhood here includes long walks from an early age, school errands, visits. Small legs learn stamina quickly. Some educators of the time praise this as character building, while others worry about exhaustion. The debate never quite resolves, but the practice continues. As you move farther from the market area, the street quiets slightly. Fewer vendors, more residents, laundry hangs from windows above, stirring faintly in the breeze. You look up and see hands reaching out to adjust a sheet, the motion casual and practiced. Domestic life spills outward, visible and audible. Homes do not hide themselves completely. You pause at a crossing and let a horse-drawn omnibus pass. It is full passengers seated close knees nearly touching. The ride looks slow, uncomfortable and expensive. Walking suddenly feels like the better choice. Many Parisians share this assessment. Public transport exists, but it supplements walking rather than replacing it. Distance is something you manage with your body first. A curious behaviour emerges as you watch people navigate intersections. There is no universal signal telling them when to go. Instead, they read one another. A glance, a raised hand, a brief hesitation that communicates intention. This form of negotiation feels inefficient at first glance, yet it works remarkably well. Scholars continue to discuss whether this reliance on human judgment created safer streets, or simply different risks. Observing it in action, you sense a high level of mutual awareness. Your breathing stays even. You are not out of shape by the standards of this city. You walk often enough, far enough. The city expects it of you, and you have adapted. There is a quiet satisfaction in realizing that your body is capable of this without strain. Movement is not something you schedule. It is woven into everything else. You notice how rarely people check the time. Watches exist, yes, but they do not dominate behaviour. Meetings begin when people arrive. Work starts when the shop opens and daylight allows. Walking itself becomes a timekeeper. You know roughly how long it takes to reach a place because you have walked it many times before. Distance is memorized physically, not abstractly. An odd detail mentioned in some personal diaries from the era is the habit of counting steps during long walks, especially among those trying to distract themselves from fatigue. You catch yourself doing it briefly, then stop. The city offers enough stimulation without turning movement into mathematics. As you continue, you realize that walking connects neighborhoods more intimately than faster travel ever could. You see transitions happen gradually, architecture shifts, accents change, smells evolve. There is no sharp boundary announcing a new district. You feel it instead in small adjustments. This pace encourages observation. You notice a crack in a wall filled with moss, a faded sign advertising a business long gone, a cat perched confidently on a windowsill, watching everything below with calm authority. These details would blur if you moved faster. Here they anchor you. You adjust your scarf as a breeze cuts down the street. The cold returns briefly, then fades again as you keep moving. Your body understands this exchange now. Stillness invites discomfort. Motion restores balance. By the time you reach your next destination, you realize that the walk itself has done more than transport you. It has prepared you. Your thoughts feel organized, your senses alert, but not overwhelmed. The city has tuned you to its frequency simply by asking you to move through it at human speed. You arrive where your morning hours are meant to be spent, and the shift is subtle rather than dramatic. There is no clear doorway between personal life and working life. Instead, one simply blends into the other. A shop front opens, a workshop door creaks inward. A narrow office up a flight of stairs begins to fill with people removing coats and settling into familiar positions. Work in 1890s Paris depends heavily on daylight and habit. This is not a city powered by switches and outlets yet. Tasks are arranged around windows. Benches sit where light falls best. Desks face outward whenever possible. Contemporary observers frequently remark that rooms felt alive only when the sun cooperated and dull when clouds lingered. Productivity rises and falls with the weather, and everyone accepts this as normal. If you work with your hands, the day begins with preparation. Tools are laid out, carefully checked for wear. Knives are sharpened, needles counted, materials inspected. Nothing is assumed to be ready simply because the day has started. Readiness is something you create. This is especially true in workshops where multiple people share space and equipment. Order matters because chaos costs time and effort. The air inside smells different than the street. Less varied, more concentrated. Wood shavings, oil, metal, fabric. Each workplace has its own scent, recognisable even before you fully enter. People here often identify professions by smell alone, a detail noted repeatedly in memoirs of the era. Your senses adapt quickly, filtering what matters from what can be ignored. If your work is clerical, the environment changes, but the rhythm remains similar. Offices are quieter, but not silent. Pens scratch against paper, chairs shift. Someone clears their throat before speaking. Light still dictates comfort. You angle documents to avoid glare. You move closer to the window without thinking about it. There is no overhead brightness to compensate. A widely acknowledged historical reality is that the working day in Paris during this period is long. 10 to 12 hours is common, especially for artisans and labourers. Breaks exist, but they are brief and purposeful. There is little illusion of flexibility. Work fills the day because there is little else to interrupt it. You notice how people hold themselves while working. Posture reflects repetition, shoulders rounded from sewing, hands calloused from lifting, eyes trained to focus on small details for hours at a time. Bodies here are shaped by tasks as much as by time. Fatigue is familiar, not alarming. Conversation flows alongside work in a way that might surprise you. People talk while their hands remain busy. Topics shift from local gossip to politics to complaints about weather and prices. Silence is not required for concentration. Instead, noise becomes background, like the hum of modern machinery. Some educators later argue that this environment encourages multitasking skills, while others claim it simply masks exhaustion. The debate continues, but the practice remains. A small but telling detail is how rarely people look at clocks. Time is felt rather than tracked. You know when it is midday because hunger returns. You know when afternoon deepens because light shifts. Someone eventually announces it is time to eat and work. Pauses not because a bell rings, but because bodies agree. In workshops, especially, hierarchy is visible, but not always formal. Apprentices take cues from masters without constant instruction. Knowledge passes through observation rather than explanation. You learn by watching, repeating, and correcting mistakes quietly. Mistakes cost materials, and materials cost money. Precision is not optional. You become aware of how sound shapes focus. A hammer striking too sharply draws glances. A dropped tool prompts brief concern. Most sounds blend into a steady pattern that supports attention rather than breaking it. This acoustic familiarity creates a sense of containment. You feel held by the room rather than distracted by it. Outside life continues. You hear carts passing, vendors calling, distant voices rising and falling. The boundary between inside and outside remains thin. Windows stay open whenever possible to bring in light and air, even in cooler months. Cold fingers are preferable to stale rooms. Many health advocates of the time emphasize fresh air as essential, a belief reinforced by frequent illness. Ventilation becomes a quiet priority. A curious practice emerges in some workplaces around mid-morning. Someone produces food often shared. A piece of bread. A slice of cheese. The exchange is casual, unannounced. Eating happens alongside work rather than apart from it. This habit reflects both necessity and efficiency. Meals do not stop labour entirely, they simply layer over it. There is ongoing discussion among scholars about whether this blending of eating and working improved efficiency or undermined rest. Standing here, you sense both sides. The pause is brief, but the continuity feels reassuring. The day does not fracture into too many pieces. As hours pass, you feel time stretch, not dragging, not racing. It moves at the pace of repetition. Task follows task. Hands move almost independently of thought. This creates a mental space that is both restful and tiring. Your mind wanders, then returns, then wanders again. There is room for reflection, but little room for distraction. Light shifts again, becoming softer, more angled. Shadows lengthen across work surfaces. You adjust position, instinctively chasing brightness. Someone comments on the sky outside, predicting rain or sun with casual authority. Weather forecasts come from experience, not instruments. A lesser known aspect of working life in this period is how often people stand. Chairs exist, but many tasks are done upright. Standing allows movement, shifting weight, easing strain. It also keeps people warmer in unheated rooms. Sitting too long invites stiffness and cold. You notice small gestures of care among co-workers. A tool passed without asking. A warning shouted just in time. A shared glance when something goes wrong. These moments knit people together quietly. Work creates community not through formal bonding, but through mutual dependence. As afternoon approaches, fatigue becomes more noticeable. Not sudden, not overwhelming, but present. Shoulders ache, eyes feel dry, movements slow slightly. No one dramatizes this. Tiredness is expected. It is not a failure of will, just a signal that the day is progressing. Records from the era often describe work as relentless, and in many ways it is. Yet standing here, you also sense a strange steadiness. The lack of artificial urgency allows work to unfold without constant interruption. There are no late-night emails waiting, no extended hours stolen from sleep by glowing screens. When daylight fades, work will eventually end, whether everything is finished or not. Or this knowledge sits quietly in the back of your mind as you continue. The day has limits. You work within them, not against them. And as repetitive as the hours feel, there is comfort in knowing they will not stretch endlessly into the night. You become aware of light again before you consciously think about it. Not sunlight this time, but its quieter counterpart. As the afternoon settles, you notice the faint presence of gas lamps, already standing ready along the street, outside their glass enclosures, dull and unremarkable in daylight. They look like promises that will not be kept until later. Inside the room still depends on the sun. Shadows stretch longer now, reaching across work surfaces, softening edges. You shift position instinctively, angling your body to catch the last generous patches of brightness. This constant adjustment feels natural. Light is something you negotiate with, not something that simply appears when you demand it. By the late 19th century, Paris has already embraced gaslighting extensively in public spaces. Street illumination spreads across the city decades before electricity becomes practical for daily use. Yet indoors, its presence remains limited. Many households avoid gas lamps unless absolutely necessary. The flame smells faintly consumes oxygen and carries a risk that never fully fades from awareness. People trust it cautiously. You remember stories of accidental fires of rooms blackened overnight. Such events are not daily occurrences, but they are close enough in memory to shape behaviour. This is why daylight remains so valued. You feel it now as the brightness fades and attention sharpens. Outside the window, someone passes carrying a long pole tipped with a small hook. He pauses briefly beneath a lamp, checking the mechanism with practiced ease. These lamplighters still play a role in the city's daily rhythm, even as technology inches forward. Their work marks time in a way few clocks do. When lamps are lit, the day has turned a corner. A detail that rarely appears in grand histories is how uneven gaslight actually is. Even when lit lamps vary in brightness, some glow warmly, others flicker weakly, casting more shadow than clarity. Glass fogs, flames sputter. The effect is atmospheric rather than functional. Streets are not made bright, they are made visible enough. You step closer to the window and watch the first lamp flare to life. The light blooms slowly, not with a snap, but with a soft swelling glow. It feels almost organic. This moment holds quiet significance. Night does not arrive suddenly here. It is eased in one flame at a time. Some later scholars question whether Parisians truly felt safer under gaslight or simply comforted by familiarity. The illumination does not banish darkness. It reshapes it. Shadows still exist. Corners remain ambiguous. But the city feels accompanied rather than abandoned. Back inside, the fading daylight prompts decisions. Someone reaches for a lamp. Another suggests waiting a little longer. Lighting costs money. It consumes fuel. Each flame represents an expense, however small. This calculation shapes evening behaviour subtly but persistently. People cluster closer together to share light. Tasks requiring precision are postponed or abandoned. You notice how sound changes as light diminishes. Voices soften, movement slow. The room seems to draw inward. This transition feels unspoken but widely understood. There is a collective agreement that the day is winding down, even if work continues for a while longer. A practical adjustment follows. Windows are closed against the chill. Curtains are drawn, trapping warmth and darkness alike. The boundary between inside and outside thickens. You feel the room become more contained, more intimate. Gaslight, when finally lit, fills this space unevenly, leaving faces half lit, half obscured. This half light encourages conversation. People lean closer to speak, not because the room is loud, but because proximity feels right. Expressions soften, edges blur. It becomes easier to talk about small things. Gossip, plans, complaints. The day loosens its grip. An overlooked habit from this era involves the careful placement of lamps. They are set not at the centre of rooms, but slightly off to the side, angled to reduce glare and shadow. This creates pockets of light rather than uniform brightness. Each pocket becomes a temporary centre of attention. A table, a chair, a pair of hands working slowly. You realise that gaslight does not invite constant activity. It encourages selectivity. You do one thing at a time. You read, or you sew, or you talk. Multitasking feels impractical. Darkness waits patiently beyond the circle of light. Interpretations differ on whether this lighting environment shaped social behaviour significantly, but sitting here you sense its influence. It asks you to slow down. It narrows focus. It makes pauses feel natural rather than empty. The flame flickers slightly, as someone moves past air disturbed. For a moment, shadows jump, then settle again. No one reacts. This movement is familiar, expected. You learn to trust the lamp as long as it behaves within known limits. Outside, more lamps ignite. The street glows in scattered points, connected by darkness. You watch silhouettes pass through light and vanish again. Faces appear briefly, then disappear. The city becomes a sequence of moments rather than a continuous scene. This pattern shapes how you remember the evening, not as a single stretch of time, but as a series of impressions. Light on stone, light on faces, light on hands. Everything else recedes. As the last of the daylight fades, you feel the day release you. Work loses its urgency. The lamp becomes the final authority. When it is lit, you continue. When it dims, you stop. There is no switch to override this rhythm. You sit quietly within the glow, aware that this form of light already belongs to the past as much as the present. Electricity waits in the wings, promising constancy and control. But for now, the flame breathes gently beside you, guiding the evening with its fragile authority. As evening deepens, you notice the city asserting itself through your nose as much as your eyes. Paris has a scent that shifts by the hour, and now it thickens, grows more complex. The day's earlier freshness has faded. What replaces it is layered, intimate, and impossible to ignore. Smoke from cooking fires drifts through open windows. Coal settles into the air with a dry mineral edge. Somewhere nearby, a stable exhales warmth and animal presence, heavy and unmistakable. You breathe it in without thinking too much about it. Everyone does. Smell here is not something you analyse constantly. It is part of the environment, like weather. The city has learned to live with itself in this way. Cleanliness exists, but it is negotiated rather than guaranteed. Written accounts from residents at the end of the 19th century describe Paris as a place where odours overlap rather than dominate. No single smell defines the whole. Instead, you move through shifting pockets. One street carries the comfort of bread and soup. The next turns sour with refuse waiting to be collected. This variability teaches you something important. You do not assume consistency. You stay alert. You pass a doorway where someone is emptying a chamber pot into a covered container. The motion is quick, practiced, and unremarkable. Waste management in this era relies on routine rather than invisibility. It is handled early or late, moved quietly, and rarely discussed. City regulations exist, but enforcement depends heavily on habit and cooperation. There is an understanding that everyone contributes to the problem, and therefore everyone shares responsibility for managing it. An easily missed detail is how often people carry small cloths or handkerchiefs, not only for etiquette but for survival. Held briefly to the face, they soften harsh smells or dust stirred by passing carts. Perfume serves a similar function, though in lighter doses than you might expect. It masks, it does not erase. You notice how your own reactions have shifted since morning. What might have startled you earlier now barely registers. The senses adapt quickly when required to. Some researchers suggest that this adaptation dulled sensitivity over time, while others argue it sharpened awareness, teaching people to distinguish between harmless discomfort and genuine danger. Walking here, you feel both happening at once. The street narrows again, and the air changes accordingly. Without much breeze, smells linger. Cooking fat hangs low. Damp stone adds a cold undertone. You move a little faster, not consciously, just responding. Your body has learned which environments invite lingering and which suggest passing through. As you approach a market area closing for the day, you encounter another shift. Fish scraps, wilted greens, damp straw. Vendors pack away goods, sweeping what remains into piles. Nothing is wasted casually, but not everything can be saved. The ground bears witness to the day's abundance and its limits. A lesser known practice from this period involves the use of scented sawdust scattered on shop floors to absorb spills and odour. You spot traces of it now, pale and fragrant underfoot. It crunches softly as you walk, releasing a faint pine scent that briefly overrides everything else. This small intervention changes the mood of the space more than you might expect. You pause near a fountain, one of the city's public water sources. The sound of water moving provides relief, not just to the ears but to the mind. People gather here, briefly filling containers, washing hands, exchanging a few words. The smell around the fountain feels lighter. Water offers psychological cleanliness, even when physical sanitation remains imperfect. Health reformers of the era frequently link disease to foul air, a theory that shapes urban design and daily behaviour. While later science revises many of these beliefs, the emphasis on ventilation and fresh air leaves a real imprint. Windows stay open when possible, streets are widened, trees are planted. You feel the result in small moments like this one. As you move on, the smell of cooking grows stronger again. Evening meals are underway. Onions soften in pans. Meat simmers slowly. Soup bubbles quietly. These aromas feel comforting, grounding. They signal a transition from labour to rest. Even if you are not stopping yet, your body recognises the cue. You pass a building where several households share a single kitchen space. Voices overlap. Laughter escapes briefly before the door closes again. The smells here are mixed, not always harmonious, but deeply human. This arrangement reflects both necessity and social structure. Private kitchens exist, but communal ones remain common, especially among working-class residents. Some historians question whether these shared spaces fostered stronger community bonds or increased tension. Accounts exist for both outcomes. Standing here, you sense how proximity could do either depending on the day. Smell becomes part of that negotiation. What one person finds appetizing, another may find intrusive. The air cools as night settles further, and with it, certain smells sharpen. Coal smoke becomes more noticeable. Dampness rises from the ground. You adjust your scarf and continue walking. The city does not hide these sensations from you. It presents them plainly. You realise that smell here carries information. Fresh bread means an open bakery. Strong animal scent signals stables or transport nearby. Rot warns you to watch your step. You read the city with your nose as much as with your eyes. This skill develops quietly without instruction. A curious habit mentioned in some diaries involves people choosing walking routes based on smell alone, especially at night. Certain streets are avoided not for danger but discomfort. Others are favoured for their reassuring familiarity. You find yourself doing the same now, turning slightly toward a street that smells warmer, more lived in. As you reach a crossroads, a brief breeze clears the air, and you inhale deeply. For a moment the city smells almost neutral. Stone, cool air, distant smoke. This pause feels like relief. You stand still just long enough to notice it before moving on. Night in Paris is not sanitized. It does not promise freshness or comfort at every turn. Instead, it offers honesty. Smell tells you where you are, what is happening, and how close you are to other lives. It keeps you grounded in your body, present in the moment. As you continue walking, you carry these sensations with you, not as annoyance, but as context. The city breathes, and you breathe with it. This shared atmosphere binds everyone together whether they acknowledge it or not. And as the evening settles fully, you realise that understanding Paris before electricity means accepting it with all senses awake, not just the ones you prefer. You begin to notice how movement gathers people together whether they intend it or not. Walking carries you far, but not everywhere, and eventually you arrive at one of the city's shared conveyances. An omnibus waits at the curb, its paint worn thin by years of service. The horses stand patiently, heads lowered, steam rising faintly from their backs. You step closer and feel the subtle shift from individual pace to collective timing. Public transport here is not designed to preserve personal space. It is designed to move bodies efficiently through limited streets. When you climb aboard, you do so carefully, mindful of boots, skirts, baskets and elbows. The interior smells of damp wool leather and the faint residue of many previous journeys. You find a spot and settle in, knees angled, shoulders slightly turned. Comfort is negotiated moment by moment. By the final decade of the 19th century, Paris operates an extensive network of horse-drawn omnibuses and early trams. City planners view them as a solution to congestion, not a luxury. They're affordable enough for regular use, though still avoided by those who prefer walking or cannot spare the fare. You feel the social mix immediately. Workers sit beside clerks, shoppers beside messengers. Status matters less once the doors close. The vehicle lurches forward and your body responds automatically, tightening and relaxing in small adjustments. You hold a strap or brace against a seat back. Movement is not smooth. Every stone beneath the wheels announces itself. Conversation pauses briefly, then resumes. No one apologises for the jolt. It belongs to the ride. You notice how people behave differently here than on the street. Voices soften. Eye contact becomes more deliberate, less frequent. There is an unspoken agreement to coexist without unnecessary interaction. This is not isolation exactly, but a temporary truce. Everyone understands that proximity is compulsory, not personal. A detail that often escapes attention is how much etiquette exists in these spaces despite the lack of comfort. Hats are tipped slightly to avoid brushing faces. Packages are shifted when someone new boards. A knee moves aside without comment. These gestures maintain order without formal rules. You sense a shared desire to keep the ride tolerable for all. As the omnibus continues, you pass familiar streets at a slower pace than walking might allow. The view from the window frames the city differently. You notice upper floors, balconies, laundry lines. Life above street level becomes visible. This perspective reminds you how vertically layered Paris truly is. Some later analysts argue that shared transport contributed to a growing sense of urban anonymity. Others believe it reinforced awareness of social diversity. Sitting here, you feel both. You do not know these people yet, you share space and motion. Their presence feels neutral, neither threatening nor intimate. A conductor moves along the aisle collecting fares with practiced efficiency. Coins change hands, tickets are torn. The sound of metal and paper punctuates the ride. There is no machine to automate this exchange. Every transaction is human, fallible and visible. Mistakes are corrected with brief words, not systems. The horses slow then stop. Someone signals to disembark and the process reverses. Bodies shift. Space opens. You step down carefully, feeling the ground reassert itself beneath your feet. The transition back to walking feels immediate and familiar. Your legs remember their role. Trams offer a slightly different experience. They run on rails pulled by horses or, in some areas, powered experimentally by steam or compressed air. These innovations excite curiosity and skepticism in equal measure. People debate their reliability, their safety, their future. You overhear fragments of such discussions as you pass a stop. Change is already in motion, even if electricity has not yet taken over. You choose to walk again, finding the rhythm grounding after shared motion. Walking restores a sense of control. You choose your speed. You choose your path. Public transport remains a tool, not a replacement for movement. Another small observation surfaces as you watch others board and disembark. People carry what they can manage. There is no expectation of storage space or assistance. If you bring something bulky, you make room for it yourself. This limits what people attempt to transport and reinforces a culture of moderation. Urban commentators from the period often praise public transport for expanding access to work and leisure. Yet they also note its limitations. Routes are fixed, schedules are approximate, delays are accepted. You feel this acceptance in the lack of visible frustration. When the ride is slow, people wait. Complaints exist, but impatience does not dominate. You pass another omnibus heading the opposite direction, its windows glowing faintly as gas lamps inside are lit. Faces appear briefly, then vanish as it rolls on. Each vehicle carries its own small community, assembled for minutes at a time, then dissolved. A curious habit recorded in some accounts involves people choosing seats based on superstition or routine rather than logic. A preferred corner, a spot near the door, a place associated with good outcomes. You catch yourself doing something similar earlier, gravitating toward familiarity without questioning it. As night approaches, the use of public transport increases slightly, but never overwhelms the streets. Many still prefer to walk home before full darkness settles. Light matters. Distance feels longer at night, and shared conveyances offer reassurance as much as efficiency. You step aside to let another vehicle pass and reflect on how these systems shape the city. They compress time for some and expand possibility for others. They bring strangers together without forcing connection. They offer movement without comfort, progress without ease. In this Paris, transport remains physical and visible. Animals strain, wheels wear down, people feel every turn. There is no illusion that movement is effortless. Every journey leaves a trace, whether in tired legs, dusty coats, or shared glances. As you continue on foot, you feel grateful for the simple act of walking. It reconnects you to the ground, to your breath, to the steady rhythm you have learned to trust. Public transport fades behind you, another layer of the city's human machinery, useful but never invisible. You move on, carrying with you the understanding that getting from one place to another here is always a small negotiation between body and space, between patience and urgency, between solitude and company. And in that negotiation, the city reveals itself not as a machine, but as a living arrangement everyone participates in step by careful step. Midday does not announce itself with ceremony. It arrives quietly, signalled by small shifts rather than a clear bell. You feel it first in your body. The steady warmth from breakfast has thinned. Your stomach tightens just enough to remind you that morning effort has been spent. Around you, others slow their movements, not dramatically, but with a shared understanding that something is about to pause. You notice how work loosens its grip without fully letting go. Hands finish what they are holding. Conversations trail off and restart on different subjects. Someone glances toward the window, reading the angle of the light rather than the position of a clock. The sun sits higher now, flattening shadows and washing detail from the street below. Meals at this hour are not about indulgence. They are about continuation. What you eat now determines how the rest of the day feels. People do not speak of lunch as a break. It is more like maintenance, a brief recalibration before returning to effort. You step into a small eating place, chosen not for comfort but proximity. The room is narrow tables, close enough that knees nearly touch when seats are filled. Light pours in from the front windows, eliminating the need for lamps. The air smells of broth bread and something gently simmering. You sit where there is space, not where you prefer. Food arrives quickly. There is no performance. A bowl is set down. Bread follows. Utensils are already waiting. The meal is warm, filling, and familiar. Stew soups, simple meats. Dishes designed to be eaten efficiently and to sit well in the stomach. Written menus exist, but many people eat the same thing each day without consulting them. Records from the time show that midday meals for workers are often substantial, heavier than dinner. This makes practical sense. Energy is needed for the hours still ahead. You feel the logic of it immediately as the warmth spreads through you, replacing the dull edge of hunger. Conversation around you stays measured. People speak between bites, not over them. Topics remain close to the present. Work tasks, prices, weather. The tone is grounded, not animated. Eating here is not social theatre. It is functional companionship. An easily overlooked habit emerges as you watch closely. People tear bread rather than cutting it. Crusts are used to soak up liquid, leaving bowls nearly clean. Nothing is wasted casually. The movements feel automatic, learned early and reinforced daily. This is not frugality as ideology. It is simply how eating works when food represents effort rather than abundance. You notice that people do not linger long after finishing. Chairs scrape softly as they rise. A few coins are placed on the table. Coats are adjusted. The room empties gradually but steadily. There is no rush, yet no one stays without reason. Some observers later argue that this pattern discourages rest, while others suggest it preserves momentum. Sitting here, you feel how the meal resets you without fully relaxing you. There is comfort, but not enough to invite drowsiness. That will come later at night when the city finally dims. Outside, the street has changed again. Activity resumes with renewed steadiness. You step back into motion, feeling heavier but stronger. The afternoon no longer feels distant or threatening. It feels manageable. You notice small details you might have missed earlier. The way light reflects off window glass. The faint hum of conversation drifting from upper floors. The rhythm of footsteps returning to work. The city inhales and exhales collectively, and you are part of that breath. A curious behaviour appears as you walk past a workshop. Someone remains seated eating while others stand. This is not hierarchy, it is necessity. Certain tasks allow no pause, only adjustment. The meal bends around labour rather than interrupting it. You see this flexibility repeated elsewhere. Eating adapts to work, not the other way around. There is discussion among later historians about whether this integration of meals and labour diminished quality of life. Yet diaries from the era often describe these moments with surprising neutrality, even affection. Lunch is not romanticised, it is respected. Your own pace feels steady again. Legs respond willingly, hands feel warm. The earlier chill has retreated fully now, replaced by the mild fatigue of progress. You pass others wiping mouths with sleeves or cloths, small gestures that mark the meal's end. The city continues without pause. There is no extended lull, no midday silence, just a brief softening now gone. You feel how time here is layered rather than segmented. Morning, midday, afternoon flow into one another without sharp edges. As you return to your path, you realise that lunch has done more than fill you. It has reinforced the structure of the day. Work before, work after, sustenance in between, nothing excessive, nothing missing. The afternoon stretches ahead long but not endless. You carry the weight of the meal comfortably like an anchor that keeps you present. And as you move forward, the city moves with you, neither slowing nor speeding up, simply continuing in the way it always has. You notice the shift when you step back indoors. The air changes texture immediately. Outside it moved freely, mixing smells and sounds without asking permission. Inside it settles. It lingers. Apartments in this Paris are not sealed boxes. They breathe slowly through cracks in stone, through imperfect windows, through doors that have opened and closed for decades. Still, the boundary is clear. Indoors feels held. You pause just inside the doorway, letting your eyes adjust. Light behaves differently here. It does not spread evenly. It pulls near windows and thins toward corners. Furniture has been arranged with this in mind, not for style but survival. Tables sit where hands can be seen. Chairs cluster where warmth lasts longest. Nothing is random. Housing in late 19th century Paris follows a pattern shaped by class and function. Lower floors tend to house shops or workshops. Middle floors hold the most desirable living spaces. Upper floors, reached by long staircases, belong to those who trade comfort for affordability. This vertical arrangement is not theoretical. You feel it in your legs each time you climb, in your breath as you pause halfway up. You move deeper into the apartment. The floor creaks softly beneath you, announcing your presence without hostility. Walls hold layers of sound from other lives. A murmur from next door. A child laughing above. Someone coughing below. Privacy exists, but it is porous. You are never fully alone, and that becomes normal. Windows are opened briefly, even in cooler weather. Fresh air is valued sometimes to the point of discomfort. Many people here believe stagnant air invites illness. This belief shapes habits more than written rules ever could. You tolerate the chill because breathing feels easier afterward. You cross the room and notice how few objects demand electricity. There are none. No switches. No cords. Everything here either works on its own or not at all. A clock ticks softly, wound by hand. A lamp waits unlit. A mirror reflects dimly. The room asks nothing of you except attention. A detail that surprises many modern observers is how multifunctional rooms are. The same space hosts eating, working, resting, and receiving visitors. Boundaries are defined by time rather than walls. A table becomes a desk by morning and a dining surface by noon. At night, it might hold a lamp and a book. Flexibility replaces specialization. You sit for a moment, letting the quiet settle. Not silence, but a softer layer of sound. Outside noise arrives muffled as if filtered through fabric. You hear it without being pulled by it. This contrast makes interiors feel restorative even when they are cold or cramped. Scholars examining domestic life from this period often disagree on how comfortable these apartments truly were. Some emphasize hardship, pointing to overcrowding and limited amenities. Others note the efficiency and familiarity of spaces designed around daily needs. Sitting here, you sense both truths at once. Comfort is relative. Familiarity softens edges. You move toward the window and look out again. From this height, the street appears narrower, almost intimate. People pass below, unaware of being observed. Their conversations drift upward in fragments. You see gestures more than faces. Life becomes pattern rather than detail. Curtains are thin, chosen to admit light rather than block it. Privacy is negotiated through angle and habit. People know when they are visible and when they are not. You adjust the fabric slightly, not to hide but to manage glare. A lesser discussed habit in these apartments involves temperature control through layering rather than heating. Blankets remain folded on chairs even during the day. Shawls hang within reach, clothing stays on indoors. Removing layers feels unnecessary, even indulgent. Warmth is something you conserve, not something you expect. You walk past a small wash area tucked into a corner. Water is stored in pitchers. Bowls wait beneath. Everything is compact. There is no wasted space because space costs money. You learn to move carefully to return items to their places without thinking. Disorder would quickly make the room unworkable. The smell inside is distinct. Soap fabric, faint smoke. It carries traces of the people who live here, their routines pressed into the air. Unlike outside, these smells feel personal. They do not overwhelm. They anchor. You hear footsteps in the stairwell and recognize the rhythm. Someone is coming home. The sound tells you more than words could. The day is shifting again. Afternoon is moving toward evening, and the apartment prepares without instruction. Furniture here is sturdy, not decorative. Chairs are built to last. Tables show marks from years of use. These marks are not hidden. They are accepted as evidence of function. Nothing here is precious in the modern sense, but everything is valued. There is ongoing discussion among historians about whether people of this era felt trapped by such spaces or protected by them. The answer seems to depend on circumstance. After hours on the street or in a workshop, returning indoors feels grounding. After too many hours inside the street, calls again. You sit near the window and let your body rest without fully relaxing. This pause is brief but important. It resets you before the evening continues. There is no expectation that home is a retreat from life. It is simply another setting within it. Outside light begins to soften again. You watch it shift across rooftops, then retreat. Shadows climb walls slowly. The apartment grows dimmer but not yet dark. You know what comes next. Lamps will be lit. Curtains drawn tighter. The room will shrink gently into itself. For now you remain still, listening. The building breathes around you. Wood settles. Stone holds cool. Lives overlap without collision. In this pre-electric Paris home is not a sealed sanctuary or a decorated backdrop. It is a working environment shaped by necessity and rhythm. As you stand again, you feel how the apartment has done its job. It has held you. It has offered pause without demanding retreat. You step back toward the door, ready to rejoin the city, carrying with you the quiet understanding that indoors and outdoors are not opposites here. They are parts of the same continuous day. As you step back into the street, you become aware of how differently women move through this city. The change is subtle, not announced, but once you notice it, it is everywhere. The pace is more measured, the posture slightly guarded, eyes remain active, scanning ahead and to the sides without appearing anxious. Paris offers opportunity, but it also asks constant negotiation, and women learn this early. You walk beside a woman carrying a basket balanced against her hip. Her grip is firm, practiced. The basket is not heavy enough to slow her, but it anchors her movement, signalling purpose. Purpose matters. It shapes how others respond. A woman with somewhere to be moves through the street with fewer interruptions. Daily life for women in the 1890s is structured by expectation as much as by law. Employment exists, but it clusters around certain roles. Seamstresses, shop assistants, laundresses, domestic workers. These jobs require long hours and physical endurance, often for lower pay than men receive for comparable effort. You see this reality in small gestures. The way hands are roughened, the way shoulders carry weight without complaint. Yet this is not a city where women remain invisible. They fill the streets, manage households, run small businesses, negotiate prices, and maintain social networks that quietly hold neighbourhoods together. Their labour often goes unrecorded, but its absence would be immediately felt. You pass a group of women standing together near a doorway, voices low but animated. They exchange information quickly. Who is ill? Who needs help? Which shop has raised prices? These conversations form an informal infrastructure. News travels this way as efficiently as through any newspaper. You realise that much of the city's stability depends on these exchanges. Clothing plays a role in daily strategy. Skirts restrict stride, but women adapt. Steps shorten. Paths are chosen carefully. Uneven ground becomes a hazard to be managed with skill rather than avoided entirely. Shoes are sturdy, often repaired, chosen for reliability over style. Appearance matters, but so does survival. You notice how women use time differently. Errands are grouped. Routes are planned to minimise backtracking. Waiting is avoided when possible. This efficiency is not celebrated. It is assumed. Domestic responsibilities leave little room for indulgence. A small but telling behaviour catches your attention. Women often walk closer to building edges than the centre of the street. This positioning reduces exposure to carts and allows quicker retreat into doorways if needed. It also keeps them within sight of shop windows and familiar faces. The street is read constantly, not feared but respected. Some historians suggest that this constant alertness limited women's sense of freedom. Others argue it fostered resilience and adaptability. Watching these movements, you sense both interpretations hold truth. Awareness sharpens capability, but it also consumes energy. Markets offer a different dynamic. Here, women take control openly. They inspect goods, question sellers, argue prices. Their voices carry authority. Food purchasing is their domain, and that responsibility grants power. A household's well-being depends on these transactions. Mistakes are costly. Success is quietly satisfying. You observe an older woman advising a younger one on how to judge produce. She presses a cabbage, taps it lightly, nods once. No words are needed. Knowledge passes hand to hand, generation to generation, embedded in touch rather than instruction. The presence of unaccompanied women in public spaces is common, but not unremarkable. Their independence is conditional. Behaviour, appearance and timing all influence how they are treated. Respectability is a currency that must be maintained daily. A misplaced gesture can invite judgment. A confident stride can deflect it. Inside homes, women manage space with precision. They know where light falls best, where warmth lingers longest, how to rearrange furniture to accommodate work, meals, rest. This spatial intelligence is rarely acknowledged, yet it defines comfort more than any architectural plan. You pass a window where a woman leans out, shaking a cloth briskly. Dust falls into the street below, accepted as part of shared space. Domestic labour spills outward, visible and unapologetic. This visibility reinforces its importance. Everyone sees the work being done. There is discussion among scholars about whether women of this era felt constrained by domestic roles or empowered within them. Diaries and letters offer conflicting impressions. Some express frustration and fatigue. Others describe pride and competence. Standing here, you sense how context shapes experience. The same task can feel burdensome or grounding, depending on support, health and circumstance. As evening approaches, women's movements adjust again. Routes change, errands shorten. The street remains active, but caution increases. Lamps are noted. Crowds are assessed. Familiar paths are favoured. This is not fear, it is calculation. You notice how women often walk together after dusk, even if their destinations differ. Companionship offers reassurance without requiring explanation. A few words exchanged, then silence. Presence alone is enough. At the same time, you see women who navigate alone with practiced confidence. They know which streets feel safe, which hours are forgiving. This knowledge is learned, not innate. It comes from experience, observation and shared warnings. You pass a cafe where women sit inside engaged in conversation. This is not universal, but it is not rare either. Public life includes them, though, often within invisible boundaries. These boundaries shift over time, debated, resisted and redefined. A lesser known detail emerges in how women handle money. Coins are tucked, discreetly counted, quickly spent, decisively. Financial management often falls to them even when income does not. This responsibility sharpens judgment and reinforces authority within the household. As you continue walking, you reflect on how the city relies on this quiet expertise. Women maintain routines, anticipate needs, absorb disruptions. Their work smooths the rough edges of urban life. The street darkens slightly as lamps begin to glow more steadily. You watch a woman adjust her shawl and turn down a side street with confidence. She knows where she is going. She knows how long it will take. She knows what awaits her there. In this Paris before electricity, women move through spaces shaped by constraint and possibility intertwined. Their daily negotiations are constant, often invisible, but deeply influential. And as you walk on, you carry a growing awareness that the city's rhythm depends as much on their careful calculations as on any infrastructure or plan. You notice children before you really see them. Their presence announces itself through sound movement, sudden changes in pace. A burst of laughter ricochets down the street. Feet run where adults walk. A shout turns into a game without explanation. Childhood here does not wait for permission. It spills outward into whatever space allows it. A boy darts past you. Coat unbuttoned, cheeks flushed from motion rather than cold. He skids to a stop near a doorway, then pivots and runs back the other way, pursued by two others who appear to have agreed on the rules somewhere you were not listening. No one intervenes, no one looks alarmed. This is ordinary. In this Paris, children belong to the street almost as much as they belong to their families. Homes are often too small to contain their energy, and daylight hours are precious. So children are sent outside early and allowed to remain there until hunger or darkness calls them back. This arrangement is not framed as freedom or neglect. It is simply how space is shared. You watch a group clustered around a shallow gutter floating bits of wood like boats. They argue briefly, then laugh again. The game requires no tools, no adult guidance. Everything they need is already here. Water imagination time. You realize how rarely children are separated from the physical environment. Stone, mud, iron, wood. These textures shape them as much as schooling does. School exists, of course. You pass a building where a bell has recently rung and children pour out in uneven lines. Some linger, some scatter immediately. Education is valued, but it competes with labour and necessity. Many children attend school irregularly, pulled away by household needs or paid work. The city absorbs this inconsistency without much comment. You notice how quickly children take on responsibility. A girl not much older than 8 carries a basket nearly as large as her torso. She walks carefully, eyes forward, expression serious. When she reaches her destination, she sets it down with visible relief, then relaxes into play as if a switch has been flipped. Duty and leisure coexist without conflict. There is little separation between children and adult life here. They overhear conversations meant for grown-ups. They witness work illness disagreement. This exposure does not come with explanation or cushioning. Some believe this makes them resilient. Others worry it hardens them too quickly. The truth likely shifts from child to child. You see children mimicking adult behaviour with unsettling accuracy. A boy pretends to haggle over an imaginary purchase. Another scolds a younger one with exaggerated authority. These performances are not taught. They are absorbed through observation. The city is their classroom as much as any schoolroom. Games change as light changes. In brighter hours, movement dominates. Running, chasing, climbing. As evening approaches, children gather closer to doorways and windows. Games become quieter, more contained. Stones are arranged. Rhymes are whispered. Stories are invented and abandoned mid-sentence. Darkness reshapes play without ending it. A small detail catches your attention. Children know which adults to avoid and which to approach. They navigate social boundaries instinctively. A baker might tolerate mischief. A shopkeeper might not. This knowledge is passed informally learned through trial and correction. The street teaches consequences gently, then firmly. You notice that children often act as messengers. They carry notes. They deliver instructions. They fetch items too small to justify an adult's time. This role places them at the centre of communication networks. They move information as efficiently as any system and with more personality. There are moments of danger, of course. Carts move quickly, horses startle, streets are unforgiving. Yet accidents are fewer than you might expect. Children learn spatial awareness early. They read movement. They listen. They react. Survival skills develop quietly embedded in play. Some later observers criticize this environment as harsh. Others recall it fondly as formative. Standing here, you sense how both views can exist without cancelling each other out. Childhood here is neither idyllic nor uniformly grim. It is simply present unfolding in real space. You pass a group of older children gathered near a workshop entrance. They watch intently as adults work inside. One asks a question. An answer comes back, brief but honest. This is how apprenticeships begin. Curiosity meets opportunity without ceremony. The path from child to worker is visible even if it is not yet chosen. As night draws closer, you see mothers and older siblings calling children home. Names echo down streets. Resistance is half-hearted. Children stall, finish one last game, then obey. Home exerts its pull gradually. The street loosens its hold. Inside doorways, children shed layers of dirt and noise. Outside, selves are folded away with coats and shoes. Inside they become quieter, smaller, more contained. The transition happens quickly, practiced daily. You realise how much of the city's future is moving around you at knee height. These children will grow into the routines you have been observing all day. They will inherit the same streets, the same habits, perhaps with new technologies layered over them. But the foundation is being laid now through scraped knees, shouted warnings, shared secrets. There is something grounding in this continuity. Children adapt to the city not by being protected from it, but by being part of it. They learn its rhythms early. They absorb its expectations without instruction manuals. As you continue walking, a child brushes past you, apologises without stopping, and disappears into a group. The moment is brief, unremarkable, and yet it captures something essential. Life here moves forward through participation, not separation. The street grows quieter as the last children are called inside. Laughter fades. Footsteps slow. You feel the shift in atmosphere immediately. The city exhales, preparing for the evening ahead. You carry with you the awareness that Paris before electricity is not just built of stone and habit, but of generations learning to live within its limits. Children are not sheltered from that process. They are trained by it, shaped by it, and eventually they will shape it in return. As the light lowers, you sense a narrowing of possibility. Not in a heavy way, not with disappointment, but with clarity. The afternoon has spent itself. Whatever leisure exists must now fit into a smaller frame. People glance at the sky more often, measuring what remains. Time feels tangible, like something you can hold briefly before it slips away. You notice how the city subtly rearranges priorities. Work slows without stopping entirely. Conversations shift tone. There is less talk of tasks and more talk of plans. Someone mentions a cafe, another suggests a walk along a familiar route. Leisure here is not spontaneous. It is chosen carefully, fitted into the remaining daylight, like a well-placed object. You follow the flow toward a small square where people gather without formal invitation. Benches line the edges. A few chairs have been dragged out from nearby cafes. The atmosphere feels lighter than it did earlier, though the air is cooling again. People stand in loose clusters, not crowded, not distant. This is social life before the evening truly arrives. Music appears without warning. A man sets down a small case and lifts an instrument. The first notes are tentative, then steady. There is no announcement, no expectation of applause. Sound simply enters the space and claims it gently. People pause. Some listen closely, others let it wash over them while continuing their conversations. Entertainment here does not demand attention. It offers itself and waits. You sit for a moment resting your legs. The bench is cold but solid. Stone remembers the day's warmth only faintly now. You adjust your coat and lean back slightly, watching faces pass through light and shadow. Expressions soften in this hour. There is less urgency in movement, more awareness of others. A curious shift happens as leisure unfolds. People from different walks of life occupy the same space without much comment. Workers still in their clothes sit beside those dressed more formally. Children linger at the edges, half included, half observing. Social boundaries do not disappear, but they blur slightly in these moments. Food plays a role even now. Someone unwraps a small parcel. Bread appears again, shared without ceremony. A piece is offered. You accept or decline with a nod. Eating here is not about hunger. It is about extending the moment. Taste anchors time. The square feels temporary, like it could dissolve at any moment if conditions change. A cloud passes. The light dims further. A breeze moves through. People adjust, but they do not rush away. Leisure adapts rather than retreats. You overhear fragments of conversation drifting past, stories repeated from earlier in the day, complaints softened by humour, plans for tomorrow spoken with less certainty than this morning's tasks. The future feels closer, now more personal. There is a shared understanding that evening will soon demand different behaviour. Lamps will be lit. Routes will change. Some people will return home. Others will head indoors for longer stays. This hour sits between obligation and retreat, and that gives it a particular calm. You notice how laughter sounds different here. Softer, more contained. It does not carry as far. People seem conscious of sound, now aware that the day's openness is closing. Noise becomes something you manage rather than release freely. A man nearby leans back and closes his eyes briefly, face turned toward the last light. No one disturbs him. Rest is respected. This is not idleness. It is preparation. The evening still holds demands, and this pause matters. You think about how leisure is framed here. It is not endless. It is not guaranteed. That makes it feel valuable without being precious. No one documents it. No one tries to maximize it. It exists because there is room for it, and because people make space. A group rises to leave chairs, scraping softly. Their departure does not end the gathering. Others take their place without announcement. The square breathes filling and emptying in a gentle rhythm. You stand again and begin walking slowly, not toward anything specific. The city feels open but quieter now. Shops prepare to close. Windows glow faintly as lamps appear inside. The contrast between indoor warmth and outdoor cool grows sharper. As you pass a cafe, you hear the sound of cups and voices layered together. This is another form of leisure, one that will last longer into the night. You consider joining, then continue on. Choice exists here, but it is shaped by comfort, habit, and cost. The street feels different under your feet. The stones are cooler, slightly damp. Sounds carry less. Even footsteps seem more deliberate. You feel your own movements slow in response. The day no longer pushes you forward. There is something grounding about this transition. Leisure before the evening is not an escape from reality. It is a recalibration. It allows the body and mind to release the tension built earlier, just enough to face what comes next. You notice how the sky has shifted fully now. The blue has deepened. Edges blur. The last warmth fades. Lamps along the street glow more confidently, their presence no longer symbolic but necessary. People begin to disperse with purpose. No one lingers accidentally anymore. Leisure has had its moment. The city gently reasserts structure. As you walk on, you carry a sense of having witnessed something delicate. Not entertainment designed to impress, not relaxation engineered for efficiency, but a shared pause shaped by light and habit. It feels honest, unforced. This is how Paris rests briefly before evening, not by stopping entirely, but by loosening its grip. And as you move forward into the next stretch of the night, that looseness stays with you, a reminder that even in a demanding city, there is room for softness when the day allows it. As daylight thins further, you find yourself slowing near shop windows, not out of curiosity alone, but necessity. Shopping before electricity follows a different logic. What you can see determines what you can buy. Glass reflects the sky more than it reveals what lies behind it, and as the light fades, details soften quickly. You stop in front of a tailor's window. Inside, suits hang in careful order, their dark fabrics absorbing what little brightness remains. Buttons catch the light briefly, then vanish again. The tailor himself moves near the back, working close to a window, posture, bent hands steady. He knows this hour well. Soon, precision will become difficult, and he will stop. Retail here depends on timing. Shopkeepers arrange their goods to face the sun when it is strongest. They know which hours invite browsing and which merely allow passing glances. By late afternoon, shopping becomes efficient rather than exploratory. You already know what you need before you step inside, or you wait until another day. You push open a door and hear the bell announce your arrival. The sound is small but important. It signals attention in a space where visibility is limited. The shop smells of wood fabric and something faintly chemical from dyes or polish. Light pools near the front. Shadows gather behind shelves. You speak your request clearly. There is no browsing aimlessly here. The shopkeeper listens, nods once, and turns to retrieve what you ask for. Conversation stays brief. Time matters now. Not because anyone is rushing, but because light is leaving. Money changes hands deliberately. Coins are counted twice, not from distrust, but habit. The transaction feels personal in a way modern shopping rarely does. You are seen, remembered. If you return the exchange, will continue rather than reset. Outside again, you notice other shops closing in stages. Shutters are lowered halfway, then fully. Lamps appear inside, casting a faint glow through slats. These closures are not synchronized. Each business follows its own rhythm based on trade habit and neighborhood expectation. A curious detail emerges as you watch. Some shops leave a single item visible even after closing. A loaf, a book, a pair of gloves. This is not advertising for the evening crowd. It is reassurance, a signal that tomorrow will resume. The object waits quietly like a placeholder for daylight. You pass a bookstore where the owner stands just inside the door reading. The pages catch the last light from outside. Soon he will stop, not because the story ends, but because his eyes will tire. Reading here is a daylight activity unless you are willing to strain yourself or spend fuel on a lamp. You feel a subtle pressure now. Not stress, but awareness. Errands must be completed or postponed. There is no extending the day artificially. Electricity has not yet taught the city how to ignore night. This boundary creates decisiveness. You either act now or accept waiting. Some people choose to shop early in the morning for this reason. Others prefer the afternoon. Very few leave it to chance. This predictability shapes daily routes and habits. You know which shops to visit first, which to leave for brighter hours. You notice how shopkeepers interact differently at this time of day. There is less salesmanship, more familiarity. Regular customers are greeted by name. A brief exchange replaces any attempt at persuasion. Trust carries more weight than presentation. A small habit catches your attention. Shopkeepers often step outside briefly before closing, scanning the street, gauging whether it is worth staying open a little longer. This decision is made by feel rather than data. Foot traffic, light quality, the presence or absence of familiar faces. When the decision is made, it is final. You walk past a hat shop where mirrors line the walls. Inside, gas lamps have been lit and the effect is striking. Reflections multiply the small flames, creating an illusion of brightness that does not quite hold. Faces appear fragmented, half lit, half lost. Trying on a hat now would feel theatrical rather than practical. This kind of lighting shapes taste. Bold colours are favoured because they survive low light. Subtle tones wait for daylight. Fashion adapts not just to trends, but to visibility. You realise how much of modern aesthetic depends on constant illumination. As you continue, you pass a grocer sweeping the threshold. The sound of the broom is steady, unhurried. He gathers the day's dust and debris into a small pile, then carries it away. Closing time rituals are important. They mark completion. They separate work from rest. You notice how people carry purchases differently now. Items are tucked closer to the body, protected from the cooling air. Wrapping matters more. Paper rustles softly. Baskets are covered. Evening invites care. Some shoppers move quickly, finishing last tasks. Others stroll unbothered by unfinished lists. Not everyone lives by the same urgency. For some, waiting until tomorrow is preferable to forcing the moment. This choice reflects temperament as much as necessity. You pass a window where a woman tallies accounts by lamplight, lips moving silently as she counts. Her posture is rigid with concentration. This task could not wait. Numbers demand clarity, even if eyes strain. She will feel it later, but balance matters now. There is quiet discussion among later writers about whether such constraints limited commerce or made it more humane. Standing here, you feel the trade-off. Choice narrows, but attention deepens. Shopping becomes intentional rather than habitual. As the last shop closes, the street changes character. Windows reflect lamplight instead of displaying goods. Commerce retreats indoors. Public space shifts from transaction to movement. You realise that shopping here is not an activity you do endlessly. It is something you complete. The city enforces that boundary gently but firmly. There is relief in knowing you cannot always consume, cannot always choose, cannot always add. You adjust your coat and continue walking. The weight of your purchase is modest, but it feels earned. The day has offered you what it could, and now it withdraws gracefully. As you move on, you sense the city preparing for a different kind of interaction. Shops give way to cafés. Windows give way to doorways. Light becomes invitation rather than display. And in that transition, you feel how Paris, before electricity, organises life around what can be seen, touched and finished before darkness claims the streets. Nothing is rushed, but nothing is extended beyond its natural limit. The day closes its ledger one shutter at a time. The first thing you notice is how information moves differently now that the day is thinning. News does not rush. It drifts. You hear it before you understand it, carried in fragments by passing voices. A name, a place, a price. Someone pauses you with a raised eyebrow and a half sentence, assuming you already know the rest. Often you do. You stop near a kiosk where papers are stacked in uneven piles. The print is dense, the type small. Headlines compete for attention, but none shout. Reading here takes effort and time, and many people simply do not have either at this hour. Instead, they listen. Someone nearby reads aloud, briefly summarising, interpreting, adding opinion without separating it clearly from fact. Others nod or disagree softly. The story changes slightly as it moves. You realise that news is not consumed in private. It belongs to the street. It is shared, argued over, corrected, exaggerated, and sometimes abandoned halfway through. What matters most is not accuracy in the modern sense, but usefulness. Does this information change anything you will do tonight or tomorrow? If not, it fades quickly. You pass a group clustered near a cafe doorway. One person gestures with a folded paper, tapping it lightly against their palm as they speak. The others listen, interrupt, question. The paper itself is secondary. The conversation is the real event. When it ends, the group disperses without ceremony, each carrying a slightly different version of what was said. You notice how memory functions as an archive. People recall previous reports, compare them to the present moment, adjust their expectations. Nothing is taken as final. Everything remains provisional until confirmed by repetition or consequence. This flexibility allows rumour to thrive, but it also allows correction. A man stops you briefly asking if you have heard about a delay. You answer honestly that you have not. He nods and moves on, already recalibrating his plans. Information here is not hoarded. It is passed along quickly, even when incomplete. The city relies on this circulation to function. You think about how few written notices you have seen today. There are signs, yes, but many are permanent or outdated. Temporary changes are announced by voice. Someone calls out a closure. Another warns of construction. These messages travel along predictable paths, reaching those who need them most through habit rather than broadcast. You overhear two conflicting accounts of the same event within minutes of each other. Neither speaker seems concerned by the discrepancy. Both are accepted as possibilities. The truth will settle later once outcomes become visible. For now, ambiguity is manageable. As you walk on, you notice how news adapts to context. Political talk grows quieter as evening approaches, replaced by local matters. Who is ill? Who is late? Who needs help? Large ideas give way to practical ones. This is not censorship, it is prioritization shaped by fatigue and light. You pass a bulletin board where notices overlap chaotically. Handwritten notes announce lost items, job offers, room availability. Some are weeks old. Others have been torn halfway down. This board is not curated. It is layered. Relevance is determined by proximity and chance. A woman stops to read one notice carefully, then copies the address into memory. She does not write it down. Paper is valuable, attention even more so. You realise how trained people are to hold information internally, at least long enough to act on it. Inside a cafe, voices rise briefly as a debate intensifies, then soften again. The argument does not end. It simply pauses to be resumed another day. This is how many discussions live here, not resolved, but revisited. You think about how slow this process feels compared to instant updates, and yet how grounded it is. Information here arrives with context. You know who said it. You know where they stand. You weigh their words accordingly. Authority is personal rather than institutional. As night settles further, the flow of news slows. People stop exchanging updates and start exchanging plans. Tomorrow becomes the focus. Meetings are arranged verbally, relying on shared understanding rather than reminders. There is risk in this, but also trust. You pass a man delivering letters by hand, moving briskly. These messages carry weight. They are not casual. Receiving one means something has been deemed important enough to require ink, paper, and effort. You feel the gravity of that even as you step aside to let him pass. You notice how rarely people check anything to confirm what they have heard. Verification happens later through experience. Did the shop open? Did the delivery arrive? Did the person show up? Truth reveals itself through action. As you continue walking, the street grows quieter. News has done its work for the day. What remains is conversation without urgency. Stories repeated not to inform but to connect. You realise that living this way requires patience but also grants relief. You are not expected to know everything immediately. Missing a detail does not feel catastrophic. There will be another chance to hear it, or it will prove irrelevant. The city carries its knowledge lightly, trusting that what matters will surface again. As you move on into the evening, you feel that same lightness settle in you. There is nothing you must catch up on, nothing demanding immediate response. For now, knowing enough is enough, and the street, satisfied, lets the rest wait until morning. You drift toward a cafe without deciding to. The pull is gentle, almost accidental, like following warmth rather than intention. Light spills through the windows in a way that feels welcoming without being bright. Inside voices overlap softly, forming a low, steady hum that promises company without obligation. You step through the door and pause just long enough for the room to register you. No one turns fully. No one needs to. The cafe absorbs arrivals easily. Chairs scrape lightly as someone adjusts their seat. A cup touches a saucer. The smell of coffee settles around you, dark and grounding. You choose a small table near the wall, not to hide but to observe. Cafes here are not places you rush through. They function as extensions of the street, slower and warmer. People come to be seen and to disappear at the same time. You can speak or remain quiet without explanation. A server approaches with an ease that suggests memory rather than training. You order something simple. There is no list pushed toward you, no upselling. The drink arrives quickly, placed carefully as if sound matters. You wrap your hands around the cup and feel heat seep into your fingers. Time behaves differently here. Minutes stretch without becoming heavy. People sit longer than necessary, but no one seems to measure necessity too closely. Conversations begin mid-thought and end without conclusion. Someone gestures with a cigarette, tracing shapes in the air. Another leans back and listens without interrupting. You notice how many roles the cafe plays at once. At one table, a man writes, pausing often to stare into space. At another, two women speak quietly, heads inclined toward each other. Near the window, a group debates something with mild intensity, then laughs and lets it go. All of this happens simultaneously without conflict. The room is arranged to encourage this coexistence. Tables are close enough to share atmosphere, far enough to keep words private. Light is uneven, favouring faces over corners. The effect is intimate without being intrusive. You realise that cafes provide something rare in this city. They allow you to linger without purpose. Outside movement always leads somewhere. Inside stillness becomes acceptable. You are not expected to buy more. You are not hurried. Presence is enough. You take a sip and let the bitterness settle. Coffee here is strong, not decorative. It sharpens the mind without demanding it perform. You feel alert but not restless. The drink anchors you in the moment. As the evening deepens, more people arrive. Coats are removed, scarves are draped over chairbacks. The cafe fills gradually, not in a rush. Each arrival shifts the sound slightly, like adding instruments to an orchestra already playing. You notice how conversations adapt to the space. Voices lower automatically. Laughter softens. Even disagreements remain contained. The cafe absorbs tension and releases it as background noise. This makes it easier to speak freely. A detail surfaces that feels almost invisible. People here rarely sit alone without interacting at all. A nod is exchanged. A comment is shared. Silence exists, but it is shared silence. Complete isolation feels out of place. Connection does not require commitment. You overhear someone recounting the same story you heard earlier in the street, altered slightly. No one corrects them. Accuracy matters less than engagement. Stories here are social currency, not records. You glance toward the counter and see the same server moving with calm efficiency. Cups are rinsed, plates stacked. Nothing clatters unnecessarily. The rhythm of service matches the rhythm of conversation. Both move at a human pace. You notice how the cafe acts as a buffer against night. Outside darkness thickens. Lamps glow more insistently. Inside light remains steady unchanged by the hour. This constancy offers relief. You are not yet ready to retreat fully indoors, but you do not want the street's exposure either. The cafe holds you between. You think about how many decisions are made in rooms like this. Not formal decisions, but life decisions. Where to go next? Who to see? What to postpone? Cafes provide space for reflection that feels communal rather than solitary. You sit longer than you intended and realize you never intended anything at all. This lack of urgency feels earned. The day has demanded enough. Now it offers softness. A chair scrapes nearby as someone leaves. Their absence barely registers. Another person takes the seat moments later. The flow continues without interruption. The cafe does not belong to anyone in particular. It belongs to whoever needs it for a while. You finish your drink slowly. There is no rush to stand. You let your hands rest on the table, feeling the grain of the wood. It is smooth from use, marked by time, rather than neglect. This surface has held countless conversations, countless pauses. As you finally rise, you leave a few coins behind without ceremony. The exchange feels complete. You step back into the street, carrying warmth with you, not just from the coffee, but from the shared quiet you are allowed to inhabit. Outside, the night feels less demanding now. You have rested without sleeping. You have been alone without being lonely. The cafe has done its work quietly without asking for acknowledgement. You move on knowing you can return tomorrow or not at all. The door closes behind you and the hum resumes without missing you. That too feels comforting. You feel the shift before you see it. Twilight changes the city's posture. Streets that felt generous earlier now seem more deliberate. Movement becomes purposeful. People choose routes with a bit more care, not out of fear, but awareness. The light has softened into something uncertain, and uncertainty asks for attention. Gas lamps glow steadily now, their light no longer symbolic but practical. They dot the streets like quiet guardians, leaving stretches of shadow between them. You walk through alternating pools of brightness and dimness, your body adjusting rhythmically. Step into light, step back into shadow. The pattern becomes familiar within minutes. You notice how faces appear and disappear, a profile sharp for a moment, then gone. This fleeting visibility changes interaction, eye contact shortens, greetings become briefer. The city does not withdraw, but it narrows its focus. You pass a shopkeeper locking up movements practiced and unhurried. He checks the latch twice, not because he doubts himself, but because routine demands it. Security here is built from repetition rather than technology. Doors, shutters, habit. These are the barriers night respects. As you continue, the soundscape shifts again. The daytime clatter has thinned. What remains feels closer. Footsteps echo more distinctly. A cough carries farther. Conversations sound more intimate even when overheard. Twilight compresses space by altering sound. You become more aware of your own presence, your steps, your breath, the brush of fabric as you move. The city asks you to be conscious of yourself within it. There is no anonymity yet, but there is discretion. You pass a group lingering beneath a lamp, voices, low bodies, angled inward. They occupy the light deliberately, as if choosing visibility over obscurity. Others move quickly through darker stretches, heads forward, pace steady. Neither choice feels wrong. They simply reflect different intentions. You notice how errands disappear now. No one shops. No one negotiates prices. The practical exchanges of daylight have ended. What remains are social movements, visits, returns, meetings. The city transitions from work to connection. A narrow street draws your attention. Earlier it felt merely small. Now it feels enclosed. Light struggles to reach its centre. You slow instinctively, not from fear, but caution. The stones underfoot are damp, uneven. Your senses sharpen. Twilight encourages precision. You realise how much daylight has carried you without asking. Now you must carry yourself. This awareness does not weigh you down. It steadies you. Each step feels chosen. You pass a doorway where light spills outward, warm and inviting. Inside, a family gathers around a table. Laughter rises briefly, then settles. The interior world glows against the darkening street. You feel the contrast sharply. Inside is refuge, outside is passage. You consider how this transition shapes behaviour. People time their movements to avoid full darkness when possible. Those who walk now know where they are going. Wandering feels less appealing. The city gently discourages aimlessness without forbidding it. A man crosses your path, tipping his hat briefly. The gesture feels more intentional now than it would have earlier. Courtesy sharpens as visibility fades. Small acknowledgements carry more weight. You hear music again, softer this time. A melody drifts from an upper window, faint and personal. Someone practices alone, not for an audience, but for themselves. Twilight allows these private moments to spill outward without exposure. You notice how lamps reveal textures differently than sunlight. Stone appears flatter, colours mute, movement stands out more than detail. This changes how you read the city. You track motion, first objects second. Your own shadow stretches, oddly distorted by uneven light. It moves ahead of you, then slips away. You are aware of being seen and of seeing less. This balance feels delicate but manageable. You pass a crossroads where a lamplighter has finished his work. He pauses, looking back at the row of lamps as if counting them silently. Satisfied, he moves on. His role fades into the background as the lamps take over doing their quiet work. Twilight lingers longer than you expect. It does not rush into night. It hovers, offering a final adjustment period. You use it to orient yourself to decide where to go next. The city feels introspective now. Even those walking together speak less. Words feel heavier, more likely to be heard. Silence becomes comfortable rather than awkward. You realise that twilight is not just a visual state, it is a social one. It changes how people treat one another, how they move, how they think. It invites a slight inward turn without closing doors entirely. As you walk on the last traces of blue leave the sky, lamps grow more dominant. The transition completes itself quietly. You have crossed from day into night, without ceremony, guided not by clocks or switches but by gradual change. The city does not announce that this moment matters. It simply behaves differently and you adapt. Twilight has done its work. It has prepared you for what comes next without rushing or drama. You continue forward, steady and aware, carrying the calm alertness twilight teaches so well. Night settles more firmly now, and with it comes a different way of moving. You feel it in your shoulders first, a subtle tightening that straightens your posture. The street no longer invites wandering. It asks you to choose, then commit. Lamps guide you, but they do not reassure completely. They simply mark where you are seen. You walk beneath one pool of light and into the next, timing your steps without thinking about it. Others do the same. This shared rhythm creates an unspoken order. People rarely collide. Everyone knows when to slow, when to pass, when to give space. Darkness sharpens courtesy. The glow from the lamps is warmer than daylight ever was. It softens, faces, blurs, age smooths edges. From a distance, everyone looks calmer, more composed. Up close, you see the strain of long days, the lines drawn by work and weather. Light reveals selectively, and you learn to accept what it withholds. You notice how conversations change under gaslight. Voices lower even when no one asks them to. Words feel closer to the ear, more personal. Laughter becomes contained, as if aware of how far it might travel. People choose their expressions with slightly more care. You pass a lamppost where several figures stand talking. They remain within the circle of light deliberately. Stepping outside, it would end the exchange. This boundary gives conversations shape. You speak, you pause, you remain visible. When you leave the light, the moment ends. The street feels narrower than it did earlier, though nothing has changed physically. Darkness compresses space. Buildings lean inward again, reclaiming presence. Windows glow unevenly, each one revealing a fragment of another life. A family gathered, someone reading, someone pacing. You glimpse these scenes briefly before they disappear behind curtains or movement. You hear footsteps behind you and glance back instinctively. Another walker moving at a similar pace, not gaining, not falling back. The shared distance feels neutral. You adjust slightly, allowing space without signalling. This is not fear, it is awareness practiced daily. Shops are closed now, their shutters firm and silent. Commerce has withdrawn completely. The street belongs to movement and meeting. Purpose feels clearer at night. People are either on their way somewhere or returning from it. There is little in between. You pass a cafe, still open, light spilling warmly onto the pavement. The contrast is striking. Inside looks dense with sound and heat. Outside feels sparse and cool. You hesitate briefly, then continue. Not every invitation must be accepted. The smell of the street has changed again. Cooking scents fade. Smoke lingers. Damp stone rises to the surface. The air feels heavier closer to the ground. You breathe more shallowly without noticing. The night encourages economy. A carriage rolls past lanterns swaying gently. The sound of wheels is softer now, muffled by darkness. You step aside easily, trusting the driver to see you in time. This trust is built from habit rather than confidence. It usually holds. You realise that night reduces choice. Fewer routes feel appealing. You favour streets you know well, where the lamps are reliable, where doorways are familiar. Exploration waits for daylight. Now is for return. You pass a man adjusting a lamp wick, coaxing the flame brighter. The light flares briefly, then settles. He moves on without looking back. Maintenance here is constant and quiet. The city stays lit only because someone keeps tending it. You notice how shadows behave unpredictably. A gesture can look exaggerated. A movement can appear larger than it is. People compensate by moving more deliberately. Sudden actions draw attention. Calm becomes camouflage. Your own reflection appears briefly in a dark window, layered with the glow of a lamp behind you. You look like a silhouette edged with light. The image vanishes as you move. Night does not allow lingering self-inspection. You hear music again, distant and faint. It could be a violin or a voice. It drifts without direction, then dissolves into the night. You cannot follow it even if you want to. Sound travels differently now, bending around corners, losing clarity. You realise that the city is quieter but not asleep. It is alert in a different way. Like an animal resting with one eye open, every sound matters slightly more. Every pause feels intentional. You pass a doorway where someone stands, watching the street, not waiting for anyone, simply observing. Their presence feels neutral. You nod once and continue. Acknowledgement passes between you without words. As you walk, you feel how the night holds you in a narrower frame. Your thoughts slow. Plans shrink to the near future. Tomorrow feels distant. What matters now is getting where you are going, staying warm, staying aware. Gaslight flickers, occasionally reminding you of its fragility. Darkness presses close, never fully pushed back. The balance feels delicate, maintained moment by moment. You adjust your pace again as the street curves. The city no longer offers wide views. It offers sequences. One lamp, one doorway, one intersection. Each reveals itself, then recedes. There is a strange comfort in this limitation. The world becomes manageable. You are not asked to take in everything at once, only what is directly in front of you. As you continue, the night feels less like an obstacle and more like a guide. It narrows focus, sharpens attention, quiets excess. You move within it steadily, not rushing, not lingering, simply following the path lit for you. And in this rhythm, you begin to understand how evenings in this Paris shape the people who live here. Night does not overwhelm, it instructs. It teaches restraint awareness and trust in small circles of light. You step forward again, letting the next lamp receive, you knowing the one behind will fade without complaint. Dinner reveals itself less through hunger than through habit. You feel the day folding inward, work finally loosening its grip. The body knows this hour, even if the mind has not named it. You turn toward home or toward wherever you will eat tonight, guided by routine rather than appetite. Inside kitchens, movement becomes careful and economical. Lamps are already lit flames, adjusted low to conserve fuel. Light gathers close to the table and leaves the edges of the room in shadow. Cooking here is not theatrical. It is practical, shaped by what is available and how much light remains to work by. You watch someone prepare a meal with quiet efficiency. Vegetables are trimmed close. Nothing is discarded casually. Meat, if there is any, is stretched through stews or soups, cut small so it lasts longer. The smell that rises is warm and familiar, not rich but reassuring. Dinner is meant to close the day, not impress it. People eat earlier than you might expect, not because they are eager, but because night limits what can follow. Eating too late means working or washing by poor light, and no one enjoys that. The schedule is shaped by visibility, not preference. You sit at the table and feel how close everything is. Plates nearly touch. Elbows must be managed. Conversation stays gentle, paced by chewing and passing dishes. There is no background noise except the small sounds of eating and the occasional crackle of flame. You notice how everyone eats with attention. Not mindfulness in the modern sense, but awareness. Food here represents effort from many directions, time, labour, cost. You do not rush it. You do not waste it. Eating becomes a form of acknowledgement. Bread appears again, always bread. It anchors the meal, filling gaps and steadying the stomach. Wine might be present, diluted, poured carefully. Water is used sparingly. Each sip feels deliberate. Conversation turns inward. The day is recounted selectively. What went wrong? What worked well enough? What can wait until tomorrow? There is no urge to analyse deeply. Fatigue shapes honesty. You speak plainly because there is little energy for performance. You notice how children behave differently at this hour. Restlessness fades. Voices lower. They sense the closing of the day and respond instinctively. The table gathers them without instruction. After eating, there is no long lingering. Plates are cleared promptly. Washing happens immediately while light still allows. Hands move through warm water, grateful for the contrast with the cooling air. Towels are reused, hung carefully to dry overnight. You realise how much of dinner is shaped by what follows it. There is no evening stretched endlessly ahead. Night is real and limiting. Once eating is done, choices narrow quickly. Some people step back outside briefly after dinner, standing in doorways, exchanging a few words with neighbours. This feels like punctuation rather than extension, a way to mark the shift from day to night. Others remain indoors, settling into quieter activities, reading, mending, conversation. These tasks require little movement and fit easily within the circle of lamplight. You feel the pace slow again, more deeply this time. The body begins to prepare for rest without being told. Yawning appears without embarrassment. Stretches are small and unconscious. Dinner here is not an event you build your evening around. It is the hinge between effort and rest. It does not demand celebration. It offers closure. You become aware of how little remains unfinished once the meal is done. Errands are complete. Work is paused. Plans have been spoken. The city has narrowed itself down to interiors and known paths. As you sit quietly, the warmth from the meal spreads slowly. It does not excite. It calms. You feel held by routine, by the predictability of this hour. Outside the street grows quieter still. Footsteps thin. Lamps flicker gently. The city accepts that the day has ended. You understand now why dinner feels different here. It is not a social centerpiece or a reward. It is a necessary turning point shaped by light, cost, and the honest limits of the body. When you finally rise from the table, there is no sense of rushing toward anything else. The evening has only one direction left to go, and it will take its time getting there. You step back into the street after dinner, and the night feels settled now, no longer adjusting itself. This is the hour when people gather deliberately for distraction, for release, for something that lifts the weight of the day without demanding too much in return. Entertainment here does not arrive on demand. It is something you go towards, something you choose with intention. You follow a small stream of people toward a theatre entrance, its facade lit modestly, just enough to mark its presence. There are no glowing signs pulling attention from blocks away. You find it because you already know where it is, or because someone told you earlier. Inside, warmth and sound spill out together, inviting but not urgent. The interior feels dimmer than you expect. Gaslight softens everything, rounding edges and blurring detail. Faces glow rather than shine. Seats creak as people settle in coats, folded carefully, hats removed and held close. The space feels shared, almost domestic, despite its size. The performance begins without spectacle. No dramatic blackout, no amplified announcement. A hush spreads organically as people realise it is time. Music rises, live and imperfect, carried by breath and muscle. You feel its presence physically vibrating through the floor and into your chest. You notice how attention works here. People watch closely but not rigidly. Some whisper briefly, then refocus. Others lean forward, elbows on knees. No one is distracted by anything glowing in their hands. The performance holds the room because there is nothing competing with it. Laughter comes in waves, spreading unevenly. It sounds different than daytime laughter, deeper, warmer, more contained. Applause follows naturally, hands clapping at different tempos until they align. This sound fills the room completely, then fades without echo. You realise how fragile this form of entertainment is. It depends on voices holding instruments staying in tune, lamps burning steadily. A missed note is heard. A forgotten line is felt. There is no correction later, no replay. What happens now is all that exists. You sense the audience participating as much as observing. Reactions shape pacing. Performers adjust subtly, responding to mood rather than instruction. The room breathes together for a while, connected by shared attention. When the performance ends, there is no rush to leave. People rise slowly, stretching, gathering belongings. Conversations spark, immediately impressions exchanged while still warm. The experience continues in fragments as people step back into the night. Not everyone chooses theatre. You pass a music hall where sound spills freely into the street. Inside tables are crowded, drinks lifted, voices raised. This is a different kind of entertainment, looser, louder, less contained. People drift in and out without ceremony. You pause briefly near the entrance, absorbing the energy. It feels tempting but also tiring. Choice matters now. You listen to your body and move on. Elsewhere, smaller pleasures unfold. A storyteller holds a circle of listeners near a cafe. A card game occupies a corner table, faces intent movements, precise. Entertainment does not require stages or tickets. It appears wherever people gather long enough. You notice how evening activities respect the limits of light. Performances are timed carefully. They end before exhaustion or darkness overwhelm attention. The night offers amusement, but it does not extend indefinitely. As you walk, snippets of melody follow you, then disappear. The city feels layered with invisible events, all happening at once but never overwhelming. You are aware of options without being pressured by them. You realise that entertainment here is not meant to fill every hour. It punctuates the day rather than replacing it. It provides relief without excess. As you turn down a quieter street, the sounds fade behind you. Lamps guide you homeward again. The city releases you from shared attention and returns you to yourself. The evening has offered its distractions and you have taken what you needed. There is no sense of missing out. Everything feels complete enough. You continue walking, carrying the echo of music and voices with you, softened now by distance and time. The night deepens and the city prepares for its final quieter hours. Night travel feels different now, heavier in the legs and sharper in the mind. You sense it the moment you step onto a quieter street. Sound thins, space stretches. Every movement feels more noticeable, as if the city is listening more closely than it did an hour ago. You walk with purpose, even if your destination is familiar. Corners are taken wider. Your pace stays even. Rushing would draw attention, and stopping without reason would feel strange. The night asks you to move with intention, and you answer without thinking about it. Lamps mark the path ahead, but they do not guarantee clarity. Between them, darkness settles comfortably. You let your eyes adjust rather than fighting it. Shapes reveal themselves slowly. Doorways become outlines. Windows glow faintly, then go dark as curtains are drawn. You hear footsteps approaching from behind and feel your shoulders tense briefly, then relax as the sound keeps its distance. Someone passes you without comment, coat brushing air but not fabric. The exchange is wordless and complete. You continue on without looking back. Certain streets feel less welcoming now, not because anything has changed, but because nothing has. Narrow passages hold shadows longer. Moisture gathers along stone walls, making footing uncertain. You choose routes you know well, where the ground behaves predictably beneath your feet. A carriage appears at the far end of the street, lanterns swaying gently. Its light moves differently than the lamps, warmer and more mobile. You step aside automatically, trusting the driver to guide the horses through the darkness. The sound fades quickly, leaving the street quieter than before. You notice how little signage matters now. Names painted on walls disappear into shadow. Directions live in memory rather than text. You know where you are because you have walked it in daylight, because your body remembers the turns. Without that familiarity, the night would feel less forgiving. You pass a small group gathered near a doorway, voices low and focused. They glance at you briefly, then return to their conversation. No one blocks your path. No one asks questions. The street accommodates everyone who knows how to move through it. Your breath becomes more visible again as the air cools. You pull your coat tighter without breaking stride. Warmth matters more now. Movement keeps it circulating. Standing still too long would invite discomfort. You become aware of how few people are travelling alone at this hour. Pairs and small groups are more common. Those who walk solo do so with confidence born of repetition. You sense this confidence in your own steps, steady and unhesitating. The sound of laughter drifts from an open window above you, brief and unguarded. It fades quickly, replaced by the soft murmur of voices indoors. Life retreats upward and inward. The street becomes a corridor rather than a destination. You reach a crossing and pause, listening before stepping forward. Sound carries differently now. You wait not because you see danger, but because you respect the limits of sight. When nothing approaches you, move on. A cat slips across your path, barely visible until it reaches a patch of light. It pauses, looks at you, then disappears again into shadow. The encounter feels ordinary, yet it sharpens your awareness. The night belongs to more than just people. You notice how your thoughts narrow. There is less room for reflection now. Attention stays on the present, where you place your foot, what you hear, how far the next lamp is. This focus feels calming rather than tense. As you near your destination, the street grows quieter still. Doors are closed, windows dark. The city rests without fully sleeping. You slow slightly, allowing your body to release the vigilance it has held. You reach a familiar doorway and feel a subtle relief, not because you were afraid, but because the journey is complete. Night travel asks something of you, and you have given it. Inside waits warmth, stillness, and the promise of rest. You step forward, leaving the street behind for now, carrying with you the awareness that moving through the city after dark is a skill learned through habit, attention, and trust. The door closes softly, and the night continues without you holding its quiet paths until morning returns. You step inside and let the door close behind you, sealing off the street with a soft final sound. The difference is immediate. Outside, the night asks for awareness. Inside, the air relaxes around you. Warmth lingers unevenly, held by walls that have been doing this work for generations. You pause for a moment, not out of fatigue but habit, allowing your body to register the change. Lamps are already lit, their flames turned low. Light stays close to where it is needed and nowhere else. Corners remain dim. Ceilings disappear upward. The room feels smaller than it did during the day, but also calmer. Darkness gathers politely at the edges waiting. You remove your coat slowly, shaking off the night. Fabric releases a faint chill, then warms again as you fold it. Shoes are set aside carefully. The floor is cool beneath your feet, but familiar. You know where to step without looking. Domestic night rituals begin without instruction. A chair is moved closer to the table. A lamp is adjusted just enough to brighten hands without wasting fuel. Water is poured for one last drink. These actions follow a sequence learned through repetition rather than thought. You notice how sound behaves indoors at night. Even small movements feel louder. A cup placed on the table carries weight. A drawer opened too quickly seems intrusive. You move more gently in response, not because you must, but because the room encourages it. You settle into a chair and let yourself rest fully for the first time today. Muscles soften, shoulders drop. The day releases its hold in stages rather than all at once. Fatigue arrives quietly without drama. If there is work to finish, it is chosen carefully. Tasks now must fit within the circle of light. Mending a tear, reading a few pages, writing a short note. Anything requiring precision is postponed. Eyes tire easily under lamplight and no one pretends otherwise. You notice how time stretches again in this stillness. Minutes are not counted. There is no pressure to maximize the evening. The night has already narrowed possibilities. What remains is enough. Voices, if present, stay low. Conversation drifts rather than advances. People speak in fragments, leaving space between words. Silence is not something to avoid. It feels companionable. You become aware of the buildings settling around you. Wood contracts. Stone holds steady. Somewhere above, a footstep crosses then fades. These sounds feel reassuring evidence of other lives sharing the same quiet. You might step to the window briefly and peer out. The street looks different from here. Lamps appear smaller. Movement is minimal. The city seems distant, as if already turning inward for the night. You draw the curtain again, not to shut the world out, but to soften it. A final task remains. Preparing for sleep. Bedding is adjusted. Blankets are pulled closer. You check the lamp wick, making sure it will last a little longer, then turn it lower still. Light becomes a suggestion rather than a presence. You sit on the edge of the bed and remove the last layer of the day. Clothing is folded, not tossed. Tomorrow will come, whether you prepare for it or not, but preparation feels grounding. You lie back and feel the mattress respond. It holds your weight without indulgence. The room smells faintly of fabric and smoke and something familiar that belongs only to this space. Your breathing slows. Outside the city continues quietly. Somewhere a door closes. Somewhere a voice murmurs. These sounds arrive, softened, filtered through walls and distance. They remind you that you are not alone, even in rest. As you close your eyes, you feel how the night has guided you here step by step, from street to doorway, from awareness to stillness. The transition feels complete. Sleep does not arrive instantly. It rarely does. Instead, you drift thoughts, loosening images, fading. The lamp glows dimly, then is turned down further until the room rests in shadow. You let go of the day without ceremony. It has done its work. Tomorrow will ask for attention again, but not yet. For now, the domestic quiet holds you, and the city outside continues its slow, patient breathing as you settle into rest. Sleep does not claim you all at once. It approaches in small steps, testing whether you are ready to let go. You lie still and feel the bed beneath you, firm but familiar, supporting weight without indulgence. The mattress does not invite sinking. It holds you where you are, encouraging rest rather than escape. The room is quiet, but not silent. Quiet here has texture. A distant creak travels through the building as someone shifts above you. Somewhere farther away, a cart rattles briefly, then fades. These sounds arrive, softened, already losing their edges. They do not demand attention, they simply pass through. You notice how darkness behaves indoors. It is not absolute. It gathers gradually, pooling in corners, leaving outlines intact just long enough for your eyes to relax. The faint glow from the lamp wick fades as it is turned down further. The room becomes a suggestion rather than a space you need to understand. Your breathing slows without instruction. Each exhale lengthens slightly. The body recognizes the end of effort and begins its own quiet inventory. Feet feel heavy. Hands loosen, jaw unclenches. The day releases itself from you in stages. You think briefly about time, then let the thought drift away. There is no clock glowing, no minute hand insisting on measurement. Night here is not segmented. It is a single long stretch that belongs to rest. You awake when light returns or when sound pulls you back. Until then, nothing asks for precision. Sleep in this city follows the body more than the schedule. People lie down earlier, but they do not always sleep deeply at once. Waking during the night is common accepted. You might adjust blankets, listen briefly, then drift again. Rest comes in layers rather than a single plunge. You shift slightly and feel the coolness of the sheet against your skin. Fabric here is plain chosen for durability rather than softness. It carries the faint scent of soap and air. That smell feels reassuring, clean enough, familiar enough. Outside, the city has grown quieter still. Lamps flicker. A final footstep echoes, then nothing follows it. Night has thinned activity to essentials only. Those who move now do so quietly with purpose. Everyone else has retreated indoors. You remember how different this feels from falling asleep surrounded by constant hum. There is no electricity here to fill silence with vibration. When the city quiets, it truly quiets. Gaps between sounds stretch longer. The mind notices them, then relaxes into them. Your thoughts wander briefly through the day. The morning cold, the bread warm in your hands, the steady rhythm of walking, None of these images arrive sharply. They float, overlap, then dissolve. Memory loosens its grip as the body takes over. You notice how darkness changes the sense of self. Without reflection, without light, you become less defined. Edges blur. You feel more like a presence than a shape. This is not unsettling. It is gentle, like being allowed to rest from being seen. At some point, you wake briefly. You do not know why. Perhaps a sound. Perhaps the body adjusting. You lie still listening. The room feels unchanged, safe, contained. You turn slightly and close your eyes again. Sleep resumes without resistance. This pattern repeats for many people. Rest comes, pauses, then returns. No one worries about it. There is no pressure to sleep efficiently. Night is long enough to allow wandering without consequence. You sense the temperature shift as the hours pass. The room cools gradually. Blankets are drawn closer. The body responds instinctively. There's no thermostat correcting the change. You adapt instead. Somewhere in the building a cough sounds, then quiet follows. Life continues even in rest. The presence of others remains faint but reassuring. You are part of a larger rhythm, not isolated within your own sleep. Dreams begin to form soft and unstructured. Images appear without narrative. A street you walked earlier, a face half seen in lamplight, a sound that feels familiar without context. These fragments do not demand interpretation, they pass through gently. You feel how the bed and room support this drifting. Nothing interrupts, nothing glows, nothing calls your attention back to the waking world unnecessarily. Sleep here is not something you optimize, it is something you allow. At some point deeper rest takes hold, muscles release fully, breathing deepens. The night moves forward without you noticing. Hours pass unnoticed, unmarked. When you stir again, it is not from urgency, it is from change. A faint light begins to seep through the window. Not brightness, just the suggestion of it. The room shifts from complete darkness to deep grey. You remain still, not ready to wake. The body recognises this hour as transitional, not demanding. You hover between sleep and awareness, comfortable in the in-between. The city outside begins its own subtle return. A distant sound. A movement not yet intentional. Morning does not arrive suddenly. It gathers itself slowly just as night did. For now, you stay where you are, wrapped in fabric, held by routine, rested enough to continue sleeping, awake enough to notice the change. This moment belongs to neither day nor night. It is the quiet hinge between them. You let your eyes remain closed and breathe evenly. Whatever comes next can wait. The city will be ready when you are. You wake again, not fully, just enough to notice the shape of the night around you. The room is still dark, but not as complete as before. A faint grey presses against the window, and the air feels colder now, as if the building has been holding its breath and finally let it out. You lie still and listen. There is a kind of silence here that you rarely meet in daytime. It is not empty silence. It has layers like fabric folded many times. You hear your own breathing first steady and close, then the faintest sound of the building settling, a slow creak that could be wood shifting or stone releasing moisture. After that, nothing for a long stretch. When sound returns, it arrives as small points, a distant footstep, perhaps someone waking earlier than you. A muffled cough that rises and disappears. Somewhere far away a door closes, not slammed, just shut with care. Each sound feels separate, not swallowed by constant background noise. The gaps between them are large enough to rest in. You notice how your mind behaves in this quiet. Thoughts come up, then drift away without grabbing hold. The day ahead tries to form itself, but without light, it feels incomplete. Plans remain vague. Worries stay distant. The body seems to prefer this state, awake enough to notice, asleep enough to not care. You shift slightly and feel the weight of blankets. They are heavier than you remembered, not because they have changed, but because your muscles have softened. You pull them closer to your chest, trapping warmth with a small movement. The air under the fabric turns warmer quickly. The air outside it stays cool, untouched. You notice the smell of the room more clearly now. Soap fabric, the faint residue of smoke. Not unpleasant, just present. It is the smell of a space that has held people. It feels steady, like a scent you could recognize with your eyes closed. Outside, the city is quiet too, but not completely still. You sense it rather than hear it at first. A faint vibration through stone, a distant murmur that could be wind or faraway movement. Then gradually the sounds become clearer. A cartwheel far off, the soft clop of a horse. These are not yet the loud sounds of day. They are the first movements the city stretching its limbs. You lie there and realize that this quiet is not always given. It depends on our street season. Tonight it has arrived and stayed long enough for you to notice it. The city has offered a pause deep enough that even your thoughts slow down. You drift again, not fully asleep, but floating. The mind moves through fragments, a lamp glow, the taste of bread, a street corner you turned without thinking. These images appear without order, then fade. They do not demand story. They simply pass like light moving across a wall. A new sound arrives closer now. A voice, low and brief, maybe a neighbour speaking in the stairwell. The words are not clear. The tone is. It is not urgent. It is just morning beginning for someone else. That knowledge feels oddly calming. You are not the first awake. You are not alone in this transition. You turn slightly and feel cold air touch your cheek, then retreat as you settle again. The room is still dim. The window has not brightened much. Light is building slowly like a careful promise. There is a moment where you can sense the difference between night and morning without being able to point to it. The air shifts, the silence becomes less complete. Sounds begin to arrive closer together. Not loud, but more frequent. The city is gathering momentum. You remain still, letting the change happen around you. There is no reason to rush into waking. The day will be long. The night has taught you that moving slowly is not failure. It is an intelligent way to meet what comes. Your body begins its quiet preparation. Fingers flex under the blanket. Toes move slightly. A deeper breath fills your chest, then releases. These small actions feel like warming up before standing, as if even the act of waking deserves care. Outside, another sound appears. A call, faint but distinct, a vendor perhaps, or someone announcing something to the street. The sound hangs for a moment, then fades. The city has begun speaking again. You let yourself listen without getting up. Listening is enough. The day does not require immediate participation. Not yet. You take in the sounds, the pauses, the way the building holds and releases them. You feel the quiet slipping away gradually, not stolen, just replaced. Your eyelids feel heavy again. Sleep returns in a soft wave. You do not resist it. You let the quiet carry you back down for a little longer because you can, because the world outside is not yet demanding. And as you drift, the last thing you notice is how gentle this transition can be when nothing is glowing, buzzing, or insisting. Just the city waking in slow layers and you waking with it one breath at a time. When you wake again, it is with a heavier awareness. Not discomfort exactly, but a recognition of vulnerability that arrives quietly in the body, a slight ache in the joints, a dryness in the throat. The sense that how you feel today depends on what happened yesterday and the day before that. Health here is not abstract, it is immediate and personal. You sit up slowly and notice how the room feels colder than it did when you fell asleep. The night has taken warmth with it. You pull a blanket around your shoulders and wait before standing. Moving too quickly invites dizziness. You have learned this through experience rather than instruction. Illness does not announce itself dramatically here. It creeps in through fatigue, through cold held too long, through food stretched just a little thinner than intended. You have seen it happen to others. A cough that lingers, a limp that does not fade, a fever that turns from inconvenience to concern. You listen for sounds from neighbouring rooms. Someone else is awake. Someone else is not. The building offers clues. When a window stays dark longer than usual, people notice. When footsteps stop appearing on the stairs, questions form without being spoken. Care happens close to home. When someone feels unwell, attention shifts inward. Blankets are shared. Warm drinks appear. Tasks are redistributed quietly. There is no expectation that health is a private struggle. Bodies fail occasionally. That is understood. You stand and feel the floor beneath your feet. Cold again, but manageable. You move carefully, testing balance, noticing stiffness. These small assessments happen every morning, even when no one names them. The body reports in and you listen. You think briefly about what happens when health fails more seriously. There are doctors in the city hospitals too, but reaching them takes effort, money, time. Many decisions are made before that point. Rest now or push through. Spend fuel on warmth or save it. Eat more today or make it last. These choices carry weight. You notice how people speak about illness in careful language. They do not dwell on it. They mention it briefly, then move on. To linger feels dangerous, as if naming weakness too often might invite it. You step toward the window and open it just enough to let fresh air in. The chill is sharp, but the breath that follows feels cleaner. This habit is common. Air is trusted. Stagnation is not. You close the window again and wrap yourself tighter. Clothing choices matter now. Layers are added or removed with intention. You do not dress for appearance alone. You dress for endurance. The city does not forgive those who underestimate its demands. You think of people who cannot adjust so easily. The very young, the very old, those whose work leaves them exposed longer than others. Their presence is felt even when they are not visible. The city moves at a pace set by the strongest, but it remembers the fragile too. As the morning grows clearer, you hear the street resume its voice. Vendors call out. Carts move. The day does not wait for anyone to feel well enough. Participation is encouraged, but not guaranteed. You drink something warm and feel it spread slowly. Relief arrives in degrees. There is no instant correction. The body accepts what it can get and makes the best of it. You notice how health is measured here, not by numbers or devices, but by function. Can you walk? Can you work? Can you eat and sleep? Everything else is secondary. This pragmatism feels harsh until you realise how grounding it is. You step outside again, joining the flow. You move a little slower today, and that is allowed. Others adjust around you without comment. The city accommodates difference quietly. You pass someone leaning against a wall, eyes closed briefly. Another offers a word, a gesture, then continues on. Assistance happens in moments, not systems. You realise that vulnerability here does not mean isolation, it means adaptation. People learn to move with what they have, rather than wait for ideal conditions. As the morning strengthens, you feel steadier, not cured, but capable. The body responds to movement, to air, to routine. Healing begins without fanfare. You carry this awareness with you as you continue. Health in this city is not something you assume. It is something you tend to daily through small choices and shared understanding. And as you move forward, you accept that fragility is not a flaw in this life. It is a condition everyone shares quietly, shaping how they live, how they help, and how they endure. You notice the season before you check the sky. The body registers it first. A different weight in the air. A change in how breath moves through your chest. The year announces itself through sensation rather than calendar. Life here bends with the seasons, not politely, but completely. In winter, the city contracts. You feel it in the way people walk closer to walls, how shoulders hunch slightly against cold. Streets empty earlier, voices grow quieter. Every action carries a calculation about warmth, how long you can stand still, how far you can go without stopping, whether the fire will last through the night. You remember how winter mornings feel heavier. Getting out of bed requires negotiation. Cold clings to stone and fabric alike. You dress slowly, layering with intention. Outside breath turns visible immediately, a reminder that the environment is not neutral. It demands respect. Summer tells a different story. Windows stay open late. Conversations drift upward and outward. People linger longer in the streets, drawn by warmth rather than light. The city feels looser, more generous. Night comes, but it does not push people inside as firmly. Sleep becomes lighter, interrupted by sound and heat. Spring and autumn act as intermediaries, brief and unpredictable. One day invites optimism, the next pulls it back. Clothing adapts daily, routines flex. These seasons test adaptability more than endurance. You notice how work shifts with weather. Tasks are timed around daylight and temperature. Heavy labour favours cooler hours. Precision waits for steadier light. When rain arrives, everything slows. Streets slick with mud and refuse become harder to navigate. You shorten routes instinctively. Food changes too. Winter meals feel heavier, built to sustain heat. Summer eating becomes simpler, quicker, less demanding. Markets respond without ceremony. Availability shapes habit. Habit shapes expectation. The city itself looks different depending on the season. Winter dulls colour. Stone darkens. Metal feels sharper to the touch. Summer softens edges. Dust coats surfaces. Smells intensify. You learn to read the city's mood by how it looks and feels rather than how it behaves. You think about illness again, how it clusters differently across the year. Cold settles into joints. Heat saps energy. The body reacts, adapts, sometimes fails. Everyone knows this without discussing it much. Seasonal vulnerability is accepted as part of life. You pass a tree shedding leaves in autumn, the sound dry and papery underfoot. Children kick through them briefly, then move on. No one pauses to admire. Beauty exists here, but it's not always lingered over. The season does not wait for appreciation. In winter, snow changes everything. Sound dulls. Movement slows. The city feels wrapped, quieter than usual. But snow also complicates life. Deliveries falter. Streets become hazardous. The beauty carries cost. Summer brings its own complications. Heat builds in rooms that do not release it easily. Sleep grows restless. Tempers shorten. The city breathes harder. You learn to move early and rest when you can. You realise how little control anyone has over these cycles. There is no technology here to flatten the year into uniform comfort. You live inside the season rather than above it. This shapes patience. You do not expect consistency. You expect change. Clothing tells the story clearly. Heavy fabrics dominate wardrobes, then disappear. Light materials emerge briefly, then retreat again. Storage becomes important. Space is found where it can be. You notice how people speak differently depending on the time of year. Complaints rise in winter, jokes return in summer. Hope clusters around spring. Fatigue deepens in late autumn. These patterns repeat with comforting predictability. You feel how the city remembers past seasons. Repairs wait for warmer weather. Plans are postponed. Certain tasks are never attempted in certain months. Memory guides behaviour. As you walk, you sense the current season holding you within its limits. You do not fight it. Resistance wastes energy. Instead, you adjust. Shorter days mean earlier rest. Longer days invite lingering. This acceptance feels different from resignation. It is practical, grounded. You work with what the year gives you rather than insisting on what it does not. You realise that seasons here are not background. They are active participants. They shape how long you sleep, what you eat, where you go, how you feel. The city and its people move together through these cycles year after year. As you continue forward, you feel the present season clearly in your body. It informs your pace, your posture, your patience. Tomorrow will feel similar, but not the same. That difference matters. Life in this Paris, before electricity, is not stable. It is rhythmic, and the seasons are the metronome setting the tempo whether anyone listens or not. You begin to hear it in passing remarks rather than announcements, a pause in conversation, a shrug that carries more meaning than words. Someone mentions a new light seen somewhere else, not here, not yet. The comment is neither excited nor fearful. It simply lands and moves on. Change does not arrive with ceremony in this city. It seeps in at the edges discussed briefly, then set aside in favour of what still needs doing today. You notice this pattern now as you walk. People acknowledge the future, then return their attention to the present. Bread must still be bought. Work must still be finished before the light fades. You pass a shop where a man adjusts his lamp, carefully coaxing the flame into steadiness. Down the street, another shop remains dark, the owner choosing to close early rather than strain eyes or fuel. Both decisions coexist without comment. Each makes sense within its own logic. You overhear someone mention convenience with a tone that suggests doubt rather than desire. The word hangs in the air briefly, then drops away. Convenience is not a promise everyone trusts. What works today feels safer than what might work tomorrow. You notice how some people linger near familiar routines more tightly now. The same cafe, the same route home, the same hour for supper. These repetitions feel protective, not stubborn. Familiarity reduces risk in a city built on habit that matters. Others behave differently. They lean forward, curious. They ask questions quietly. They watch new installations being tested elsewhere with interest that does not quite become commitment. Their eyes follow the idea rather than the object itself. You sense that no one agrees fully on what improvement means. For some, it suggests relief. For others, disruption. The city holds both views at once without forcing resolution. A street you know well appears unchanged tonight. Lamps glow. Shadows gather. Movement follows the same patterns it always has. Yet beneath that familiarity, something feels slightly provisional, as if this arrangement knows it is temporary, even while performing its role perfectly. You pass a group talking animatedly, then another that walks in silence. Both groups move throughout the same space under the same lamps. Neither reacts to the other. Difference here does not require confrontation. You notice how rarely people rush toward novelty. They circle it. They test it indirectly. They wait to see who else adopts it first. Trust builds through observation rather than persuasion. The city itself seems undecided. Stone holds steady. Wood creaks familiarly. Light flickers in its usual way. Nothing looks eager to be replaced. And yet somewhere beyond this street, something new is being tried quietly, experimentally. You feel the tension not as anxiety, but as a gentle stretch. The day you have lived could repeat itself tomorrow almost exactly, or it could shift in small ways you would only notice later. Both possibilities feel real. You step aside to let someone pass and notice they carry a tool you do not recognize immediately. It catches the light briefly, then disappears into shadow. You do not ask about it. Curiosity does not always require answers. You hear laughter ahead, then the sound of someone disagreeing sharply, then reconciliation in the form of shared silence. The future is discussed, then dropped. The present resumes its authority. You realise that resistance here is rarely loud. It shows itself through delay, through continued use of what already works, through quiet preference rather than argument. At the same time, adoption does not announce itself loudly either. It begins with one lamp replaced somewhere else. One room lit differently, one habit altered slightly. The city absorbs these changes slowly, allowing them to prove themselves. As you continue walking, you feel how this moment sits between certainty and possibility. The city is neither static nor eager, it waits, observing itself. You're aware that you are standing in a narrow window of time, though no one around you names it that way. People live as if tomorrow will resemble today because that assumption has always been safe before. You turn a corner and the street looks exactly as it should. Lamps glow, doors close, footsteps fade. The night proceeds according to rules everyone understands. And yet, beneath that understanding, there is a quiet awareness that not everything will remain this way forever. The city does not mourn this. It does not celebrate it either. It simply continues carrying its habits forward until they are no longer needed. You move on, feeling the balance between holding on and letting go, knowing that whatever comes next will arrive gradually layered over what already exists rather than replacing it all at once. You feel it as a quiet narrowing, as if the city itself is drawing a slow breath and holding it. Nothing dramatic marks this moment. There is no announcement, no signal that something is ending. And yet as you walk, you sense that the routines you have followed all day belong to a particular kind of time, one that will not repeat forever. People around you move with practiced ease, carrying habits that feel complete in themselves. Lamps are lit at the right hour. Doors are bolted with familiar gestures. Conversations taper naturally as night deepens. Everything works. That perhaps is what makes the moment fragile. Systems that function well rarely announce their own impermanence. You pass a man adjusting a wick, fingers blackened from use. He squints, satisfied, and steps back. The light steadies. He does not linger to admire it. This task has been performed so many times that its success feels ordinary. Yet you realise how much knowledge sits inside that simple motion, how much repetition it took to make it invisible. Nearby, someone else chooses not to light a lamp at all, preferring darkness to expense. They sit closer to the table, closer to the flame, already burning. Their evening reshapes itself around that choice, without complaint. Both ways of living coexist easily, neither arguing for superiority. You walk past windows glowing softly, each one framing a private world. Inside, people read, men talk, or sit quietly doing nothing at all. These scenes feel self-contained, complete. No one appears to be waiting for improvement. Life unfolds as it always has within the limits everyone understands. And yet, you catch fragments of conversation that hint at curiosity. Not urgency, not excitement, just wondering. Someone mentions brighter streets elsewhere. Another speaks of rooms that no longer dim with night. The tone remains neutral, information shared, then released. You realise that this generation stands with 1 foot in familiarity and 1 foot in possibility, though few would describe it that way. Most are simply living their days, adjusting to what exists now, trusting that change, if it comes, will find its place eventually. You feel a sense of compression, as if the world has become briefly smaller and more knowable. You understand how to move through it. You know what to expect when you turn a corner, when you open a door, when you lie down to rest. This predictability feels like security. You also sense how much effort underlies it. Every routine requires attention. Every comfort depends on someone remembering to do something at the right moment. Forgetting has consequences. Light fades. Warmth disappears. Silence grows heavy. You pause beneath a lamp and look down the street. The glow does not reach far. Beyond it, darkness waits patiently. This balance feels exact calibrated. Too much light would flatten the night. Too little would make movement difficult. The city lives within this margin, maintaining it night after night. You notice how little people speak about progress in concrete terms. There is no shared vision pulling everyone forward. Instead, there is a shared competence holding things steady. The present works well enough to deserve respect. As you walk on, you feel the weight of this moment settle around you, not as nostalgia, but as awareness. The city you are moving through is fully itself, not a prelude or a shadow. It is a complete way of living shaped by limitation and habit and shared understanding. You think about how easily such completeness can be misunderstood later, described only in terms of what it lacked rather than what it contained. Standing here, you feel how full it is, how alive. Footsteps echo ahead of you, then fade. A door closes softly. Somewhere a voice lowers and then stops. The night deepens without asking permission. You continue walking, aware that you are carrying something fragile simply by noticing it. The shape of evenings, the reliance on light that must be made by hand, the trust in routines pass quietly from one person to the next. This is not the end of anything yet. It is simply a moment of balance, held briefly before weight shifts. The city does not know what it will become. It only knows how to be what it is tonight. And as you move forward under the steady lamps, you feel the calm that comes from inhabiting a world that understands its own limits, even as those limits begin slowly to blur. You slow without realizing it, as if the city has gently placed a hand on your shoulder. This is the edge of the day, not marked by clocks or announcements, but by a shared easing. Lamps continue their steady work. Doors close one by one. The street grows selective, allowing only necessary movement to continue. You take a familiar route, not because it is the shortest, but because it feels right. Your feet know it. The stones answer your steps predictably. The city at this hour is not trying to impress you. It simply allows you to pass. You notice how little effort it takes now to be present. The day has stripped itself of options until only a few remain. Walk, turn, stop, continue. Each choice feels obvious. There is relief in that clarity. Windows glow and dim in uneven patterns. Some rooms are lively. Others are already still. You glimpse hands, moving heads, bent bodies settling into rest. These fragments do not invite comparison. They reassure you that many endings are happening at once, each complete in its own way. You pass beneath a lamp that hums faintly. The sound is barely there, but you notice it now because there is space to notice small things. The flame holds steady. Light rests on stone. Shadows keep their distance. You think about how the day held together without asking to be recorded. Moments were not saved for later. They were lived and then released. The morning cold, the warmth of food, the soft pull of evening. None of it needs proof to remain real. As you near your door, your pace slows further. Arrival does not need to be rushed. The street has done its work. It carried you through the day and returned you here intact. You pause before entering, taking one last look down the street. Lamps line the way back, marking a path you could follow again tomorrow, or not. The city does not insist. It will be ready either way. You step inside and close the door. The sound seals the night out gently. Inside, the air feels held and familiar. You remove your coat and set it where it will wait for morning. The floor is cool. The room is dim. Everything is where you expect it to be. You move through the final motions without thought. A lamp lowered. A chair nudged into place. A breath taken slowly and released. The day loosens its last threads and lets go. You sit or lie down and feel how the body responds immediately. Shoulders soften, jaw unclenches. The muscles that carried you all day release their grip. Rest arrives not as collapse, but as permission. You realize how complete the day has been. Not full of spectacle, not empty of effort, balanced. The city asked for attention and gave back structure. It limited you and supported you in equal measure. You close your eyes and let the images fade. Lamps, streets, faces, sounds. They drift away without resistance. Nothing pulls you back to review or correct. Tomorrow will bring its own sequence shaped by light and habit once again. And now, as promised, the pace slows even more. The night settles fully around you, soft and unhurried. Breathing deepens. Thoughts lengthen and then thin out. The body finds the shape it needs and stays there. You're not waiting for sleep. You are allowing it. The city outside continues its quiet work, holding its lamp steady, keeping watch without urgency. Inside, you are safe to rest. There is nothing you must remember, nothing you must prepare. The story has reached its natural pause, not an ending, but a gentle stopping place. Tomorrow exists, but it does not need your attention yet. Let the room darken further. Let the last sounds fade. Let the sense of time loosen until it no longer matters. You have walked the day. You have crossed the night. Now there is only rest. Stay here for as long as you need. Sweet dreams.